Hey, everybody out there. Sam Dennehy, Halfass presents the podcast. This is another episode. And we got a special guest from all the way on the other side of the pond, the UK to be exact. I'm super excited to talk to her. Her name is Jennifer Kirk. She has her own podcast channel, which I'll link in the description for you all to follow her. She's been on the, I think it's called the Great Train Build Off on the UK channel, and it's on YouTube as well. I'll put a link in the description for that. And overall, a huge modeler in the train world. And her forte is HO scale. So that's right in the wheelhouse for this podcast. I don't know a whole lot about her yet, and we're going to hopefully dive into all that soon. But I do know she's a modeler in HO, and she's a railroader, so it's already good there. And she's doing kind of the same thing I'm doing, just not interview-wise, just more podcast with her layout and doing a Monday live stream. I think it's like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock Eastern time in the US. I think it's 6 or 7 o'clock on her time in the UK. But we'll dive into that too. So with that being said, stay tuned because she'll be right in here real quick. All right, looks like it's recording. Hey, everybody out there in YouTube land, this is Sam Dennehy, aka Half-Ass Customs, and this is Half-Ass Presents, the podcast. Today's special guest, like I said in the monologue, is Jennifer Kirk, well known in the modeling world out there in the UK. I think a lot out here too, but I'm not exactly sure her fan base for America. But either way, we're going to dive into that and see what she's all about. So stay tuned. Jennifer, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got in this hobby?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Kirk, and I have my own YouTube channel covering all sorts of things from reviewing new models, how-to guides, as well as just following model creation. I also get out and about doing interviews, visiting places to do with the rail world in the real world. But I first got into model railways, I guess. I blame my father. I'm the middle of three girls. And when I was very, very young, my father was basically desperate for an excuse to get his childhood toys out from storage to play with them. And I was the one that took the bait. So I've got all these really great memories as a small child. I must have only been maybe 18 months, 2 years old tops. And
Wow.
sort of peering over the edge of the table, and he had all of his childhood trains laid out on the top, and he'd be running them, and I'd occasionally try to touch something and he'd be like, no, Daddy's showing you how it works. And then my mum would look round the door and go, I hope you're letting them have a go. Yes, nothing wrong. And you know, it kind of developed from there. And as I got older and probably less ham-fisted, so he kind of really started to let me get more involved. And we used to go to shows together, we used to go to shops together, and it was a great bonding experience with my father. And I think that parents are always the most influential. You know, if you have a parent that's, say, really into a particular type of team sports, then their children tend to pick up on that interest.
Right.
But in my case, it was my father really liked model railways.
That's really neat. I think that's probably a lot with most hobbies, is that's how anybody gets into it, is mostly from their parents, I would suspect. If they're into something, whatever it is, the kids will tend to be in it to a degree. And it's definitely strange in the model railroading world that, like say in the classic car world, you could like a certain kind of classic car, but then your kid may like a different version of the car, like a modern day car, just souped up with different wheels and different paint jobs or whatever, but they still into cars. Model railroading, there's really one way to go. You're either in it and you like kind of all of it, so you can model whatever you want, or you're not in it at all, no matter what your parents, influenced you with. And it's neat to see that it's still going, like the hobby hasn't died. And I think out here in America, it'll eventually get that way. But I see in the UK, you guys got so much more of a presence in this hobby than America does. And it's so awesome to see the
Yeah,
difference.
it's one of the things actually. I mean, there was a big worry in the UK maybe about 10 years ago that the hobby was kind of starting to die out. And what we were seeing was that there weren't any younger people coming up into the hobby. So you had older people passing away, so they would leave the hobby in that respect. And there was nobody coming in at the bottom. So we saw with say some of the classic models, things like Hornby 00, which was a big brand through the 1950s and the 1960s, very, very popular on the collector's scene. And around 2005, there was nobody new getting interested in that. And we saw prices just tank because there was
Wow.
more coming up for sale than people wanted. And there was this big worry that the hobby would die out. And what we actually saw was that there were a number of companies came into the hobby, new companies that were bringing very, very different ideas in terms of what you could do with materials for modeling. But also we had the rise of DCC, which brought a whole new aspect to operation, which started to really appeal to the younger generation who'd maybe got involved with computers, with gaming and technology. And that was very good at bringing that generation into the hobby. Coupled with that, we had an interest from television, and there were a number of TV series have been made in the UK covering different aspects of the hobby. But rather than being the kind of stereotypical look at the weird people with, in the UK, there's this sort of stereotype of people in anoraks with thermos flasks taking down numbers, and it served to dispel those myths. It made the hobby kind of cool for the masses, and it also played into the creative aspect. So one of the series that I did was Great Model Railway Challenge, and it was about
Yes.
pushing the boundaries of what you could do to kind of fire up people's imagination. And especially after that, we suddenly found exhibition managers, model shop owners were starting to say, we're seeing families, younger children, that spark of imagination had been lit. And we've really
Right.
seen the renaissance in the last probably 5 to 10 years as the hobby has kind of started to reinvent itself for a new generation. And we've got away from, there was a lot of like really old stilted techniques for making models in the UK with things like dyed sawdust. And it was,
Right.
I always used to despair when you would read a magazine article and people would say, oh yes, I made the grass in the tried and tested Pritchard method from 1953. And you
Yeah.
think, no, things have moved on. All of a sudden we found brands like Woodland Scenics, and it was a completely new way of thinking about how to do terrain, how to make trees, how to make grass. And we had static grass, which was just a revelation when it
Oh,
started
yeah.
to come through. And I think it all came through at about the same time.
Yeah, I see that in the hobby too. I think 5, 10 years literally is when things started to jumpstart
Hmm.
the ideas of how to do stuff, because before then the technology side of the hobby has grown so slow that it
Hmm.
was like you were doing the same thing that everybody else was doing. And then all of a sudden, which is crazy, I don't know why it took this long for it to do it, but all of a sudden you got to jump start into doing things different, having more options out there. And now even within the last 5 years, I mean, it's even jumped, 4 times as far as it did 10 years ago. I mean, DCC has revolutionized all of model railroading without you having to plug something into, your module or whatever. And now with 3D printing and then electronics with the LEDs getting smaller and smaller, like everything is getting so incredibly uh, far and better that
Hmm.
the sky's the limit, really. You just have to have the imagination and the know-how.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen in the UK, certainly over the last few years, models coming through that feature multiple lighting options. So rather than just having a headlight that comes on, we've got cab lights, we've got head code lights, we've got engine room lights
Right.
on passenger rolling stock. You know, you've got vestibule lights, you've got compartment lights. I've even seen on some models, certainly in the UK, there's certain types of trains, when the doors open, there's like an orange light that comes on down the side on the outside of the train to signal that the doors are unlocked. And you know, starting to see models even have that kind of functionality, which is
Yeah.
all possible by the embracing of cutting edge electronics technology. We've
Right.
seen sound units with very clever design of speakers to get the most
Mhm.
out of the sound, and we're starting to see now as well smoke units coming through, which actually look like real steam and smoke rather than, you know, I remember like smoke units back from when I was young. They were kind of a strange novelty, and all
Yeah.
they do, it would be like somebody lighting incense. It didn't look like smoke. It just created.
Not at all.
But these, they actually look like a steam locomotive when you turn the blower on, and you get that very prototypically accurate plume coming out of it with steam coming out of the drain cocks. And it's quite
Right.
amazing. This, I think, you know, once you get a few people innovating, it kind of jump starts everybody else to think, whoa, we've got to do something to keep up with this. And you see all of the manufacturers start
Hmm.
to really up their game. Because, you know, up until 15 years ago, the actual technology in a model locomotive was the same
Right.
technology that we had in the 1950s. Nothing had particularly changed.
Not
Uh,
really. Maybe smoother engines, but that was as far as the technology went.
yeah, yeah.
It didn't go any further than that, which is so crazy to think because the hobby, I mean, I I started off liking trains when I was young. I loved the steam engine era. That's my fanboy of trains is steam engines. And being that I knew at a young age I was never going to afford a real steam engine, I quickly went into automobiles, and now I mostly customize cars for the HO layout scene. And I could afford a real car. I couldn't afford a steam engine. So I wanted something I could actually have and then probably in the future have multiples of. And so I always kept trains in the background, like the love for them, but I never really modeled them anymore as much as cars. But just that by itself, this the steam engines and then the diesel engines, the technology just from the last 10 years skyrocketed to the roof of the technology possibilities. And then everything before then, like you were saying, nothing changed. And you wonder why, because the hobby never died. It continued to go. I mean, it maybe not have grown, it just didn't die, at
Mm.
least out here in the States. So you wonder why the technology never grew with the cars or with the trains, because they would come out with new box cars, they would come out with new locomotives, but the technology behind it never went along with the new tech for
Yeah.
making a locomotive. So you
I
wonder why.
see. I have pondered on this question, and I do wonder whether it's the ease with which modelers can now communicate with each other. Certainly, when I started, you know, you'd get a monthly magazine. There'd be a monthly magazine. You'd go to a shop and buy a copy, and that was your only portal to what other people were doing in a lot of
Right.
instances. Certainly in my cases, you know, I can remember getting a monthly magazine, and you pour through it to get ideas and inspiration, and they kind of acted like a gatekeeper in that, you know, only you had to be be in the community, be
Right. Right.
known to the journalists who were producing these magazines to get into them. So you tended to find that they were very much perpetuating what had gone before, you know, playing it safe and steady. And then all of a sudden we saw the internet turn up in the mid 1990s.
Hmm.
And just like in all walks of life, I think people started to reach out and find each other. And now, you know, we sat here, and 20 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do this conversation unless we were,
I'd have called you
yeah,
over the phone.
on a phone line, and there'd have been like a 2-second delay, and it would have sounded
Right.
like somebody was frying bacon in the background.
Right.
And now, you know, we can go on internet fora, we can go on websites, message boards, be in virtual groups. Then we've had the rise of YouTube, so you can physically see people's layouts in all stages of construction. And I think we're suddenly all exposed to this huge amount of creativity that's out there, without it being kind of filtered down through a very narrow lens of
Right.
magazines. You know, and I think that that has opened up possibilities. You know, where you go on an internet forum and somebody will be saying, you know, I've been looking at these electronics components and I think I can use them to do X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden people are thinking, oh yeah, actually I could do this or I could do that. And you look at other people's techniques and it's almost like it's being refined in real time.
Right.
And, you know, I do suspect that perhaps the internet has been an incredibly positive thing for the community, for a lot of communities, but certainly for the modeling community.
I never looked at it like that. Like the technology seemed to grow when the world got smaller and was able to communicate a lot easier and a lot quicker. I didn't put those two together, but you're almost, it sounds like you're 100% correct. As soon as we were able to talk to each other all over the world, and people had these ideas for this and had these ideas for that, and we were able to share it, the ideas were able to grow and become much bigger than you could ever think. Because if you weren't in anywhere, shape, or form close to a train show where you lived, you were never going to go to a train show, and then you were probably never going to get noticed by a magazine to be published in the magazine to be written about. So your idea that maybe you had the pioneering sense of revolutionizing the hobby would have never ever got out if the internet didn't give us the possibility to share it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a bit like I talked a bit about, I gave Woodland Scenics as an example of a company making products that up until probably maybe only 10, 15 years ago at most, Woodland Scenics was unheard of in the UK. You know, we had companies that were making products in exactly the same way and methods that they had been doing for decades and decades. So you used to get bags of, they call it scatter, and it's basically it's dyed sawdust. It's just dyed
Right.
like grass, and
I
that was
remember that.
techniques that people who were building layouts in the 1950s and the 1960s were using. And then all of a sudden we got exposure to this new way of thinking, and it just kind of blew our minds. And there were also companies in Europe that certainly in the UK, like Noch and Faller and Preiser, that were kind of pushing the boundaries. And suddenly we were able to find these. And because
Right.
people start, I guess, go, you know, I've seen this great product online, can you order it in? They'd go into their model shop, and because there was suddenly this this knowledge of the product and customers saying we want this product, they start to find a way of importing it and stocking it. And now you see the companies that were making this sort of boring products for decades and decades,
Yeah.
they don't get a look in anymore because people have found the good stuff.
Right. Well, that's funny you say that, because going back to your comment about the Great Model Railroading build off, and it opened the eyes to a lot of your country and a lot of other countries that tuned in, that was watching on YouTube or whatever, that you guys would have these themed challenges where it might have been apocalyptical or space age or whatever, and things that nobody had ever thought of doing on their layout because everybody was building the same thing, and they pretty much still are today. It's modern to you know, old west or whatever. Nobody's doing sci-fi or out of the box builds, and that show gave everybody the idea, holy cows, there's a whole nother side of this hobby that I never even thought about. And I think that was one of the greatest things that that competition show could have ever done for the hobby, because literally everybody's building the same thing. They're building a modern layout to the old 1800s and 1900s layout. There's nothing in between it, but just time and years. But it's the same trains, it's the same cars, it's the same buildings. That allowed you to see, oh, we can make a apocalyptic, scene with zombies and monsters coming at us or whatever.
And it's very much about pushing the limits of what you can do with the materials, and it's about freeing up people's imagination, because what comes back out of that is that if people don't feel like, oh, I'm being judged, I have to make something conventional, all of a sudden people think, I love Thunderbirds, the TV program, so I will make a model and I will bring that in, or I like Jurassic Park, so I'm going to build a model that brings in elements of that. And it made people free up their imagination. And what we found in the UK was, all of a sudden we were getting younger generations that had almost felt like they were lost to the hobby, because they'd found Xbox, they'd found PlayStation. All of a sudden they were going, actually, this looks really great fun. I want a piece of this. And I remember the year that I did that series, we went and there was a lot of promotion to promote the series, so we were doing a lot of model rail exhibitions, and there was a lot more families coming round, and a lot more women were coming round, boys and girls as well, but people coming around as a family unit, and started to see rail modeling as being a family activity, rather than dad's going to go down in the basement and play with his trains. Suddenly it was like mum, dad, brother, sister all get together and are fired up creatively to make a project together as a family unit. And I thought that was really, really great for the hobby to see that.
That is. Yeah, and this is, so I've watched that show. I've watched, I think, 3 full seasons of that model build off. And I did notice it, like the train clubs that you guys had, a lot of them were families, like father and son and daughter, and sometimes the wife or whatever. And I thought, how awesome is that to have some of your best friends and your full family all going together to accomplish this one thing. Out here in the US, this hobby isn't a family-oriented thing. It may be father and son, but it's hardly that. It's mostly just the father, the husband, or the senior citizen old man that's still doing it or whatever. You go to a train show out here, the wives are being drugged to the show and bored out of their mind. I know I went to the biggest train show on the East Coast the beginning of last year, right before the pandemic hit. And my wife went because she didn't want me to drive 12 hours north all by myself. I said, I can do it. I have no issue doing it. I really don't want you to go if you're going to be bored. She goes, I'll go. She was bored the whole 2 days. Like she was going to die. She was so bored, which I understood. I knew that was going to happen. I did want her to go just for that. But seeing that show and seeing that and listening to your statement just now about it's a family thing, I wish that could influence the US so more families would be involved in it, because that is so cool.
I mean, that show actually, it did get syndicated to a number of different territories, which I thought was great. It was the first time that a model railway related program had kind of got this appeal beyond the United Kingdom. So we were syndicated across Scandinavia, and they really loved it. And what they were reporting back as well was that they had the same effect. People were watching that on television and being inspired, and they were seeing more families go around exhibitions. It was syndicated out across parts of Europe, so much so actually that I think it's Belgium, or it's either Belgium or Holland, is actually making their own version of it. So they're
good for them.
a locally orientated version. I think it was syndicated across Australia as well. And I know that Ken Patterson from What's Neat This Week, really, really working hard. He desperately wants that show to have
Yeah.
an American version made. And I
I
think
I
there's a good,
watched that episode with you and him talking about that, and it made me think, God, I need to get behind him and help figure out somehow to help him. But I don't know how to do it. But he's got all the connections. I don't have no connections. So I just have to ride his coattails.
yeah, and I think maybe it's one of those things that if people want to see that and recognize how much that would bring to the hobby, we need to get manufacturers behind it. I know in the UK when we filmed that, it was supported by Bachmann UK. We had Hornby, which is a really huge brand in the UK. We had Pico, who do lots of the track, the electrics, and some of the scenery stuff. And there were a number of other companies as well. So we had like really big names in the hobby on board backing that. And I guess in the US, the best approach would be to get some of the really big manufacturers, maybe like
Right.
Walthers, Woodland Scenics, Bachmann US as well, all just to get together and go, if we band together and go to the networks and say, look, we believe this can work,
Yeah.
you're more likely to get somewhere with that. Because I know in the UK for many years, I guess they've been saying, we keep telling people there's no demand for it. And when they tested the water with a few, the one that I did first was, it was called Biggest Little Railway, and we literally tried to build the biggest model railway that had ever been done in the world, and we did it coast to coast, which is
Wow.
quite easy in the UK if you pick the right place. It was 72 miles. Uh,
Oh,
and I mean that's really big for a model railway, and it was
yeah.
we physically ran. It was a live steam locomotive about this big, and we physically ran it from one side of the country to the other on this
Oh,
track
yeah,
that was.
yeah, yeah. I did watch. I think it was your a condensed version of from the beginning to the end, and you were talking about how they made these bridges for places that went over rivers and had to climb hills, these helixes and stuff. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
that was so neat to watch.
Yeah, and we filmed that on location over about 2 weeks, and it was hard work because we were in what was actually quite a very remote part of the UK. So really hard work, but we actually succeeded. We got a miniature train to run coast to coast. I think the train took about a week to make the journey, and it took 2 weeks to actually lay the full track. And as we were laying track, they set the train off about a week later from when we started, and it was slowly
Okay.
catching us up as we got, so that when we actually
Wow.
reached the end, the train was kind of yapping at our heels as we. So we laid the track, and the train went through about an hour later. But it kind of proved to TV world that there was actually a huge market in this, because that got a really good audience, not enough to get a repeat series. And of course, where do you go from there once you've made the world?
Different countries, probably.
But I guess it kind of proved that there was a market for this stuff, whereas for years and years, TV execs, I guess, had looked at it and seen us as the stereotypes and thought we were like weird people down in basements, in roof spaces, just
That's
kind of.
how it is out here in the US.
Yeah. And it started to dispel those stereotypes. I don't know, Ken Patterson has done a huge amount for the hobby to really.
He's the leader in our country. He
Yeah.
really is.
And he's big over here as well. People are starting to see just how much of interest there is around the world. So we're getting a lot more US outline modelers in the UK. European modelling as well is becoming quite big over here, and even modelling things like Australia. 5 years ago, if you'd have said to me, name an Australian brand, I couldn't have done it. But I've
Right.
just bought my first Australian locomotive from a company called Haskell, and these are great models, and it's really opening my eyes up to how modelers do things in different territories, but also the richness of this planet in terms of the scenery options that it can offer. So if
Right.
you want to model a layout set in Kalgoorlie out in the Australian outback, it is such radically different terrain to model that even say if you were to model something in Utah
Right.
or Bern in Switzerland, so
Yeah.
it just opens your eyes up to these huge modeling possibilities.
Well, leading with that too, it does seem like from the few major train layouts in the world that you see, before Wonderland did in Germany, it seemed like there were very few huge model layouts that were modeling multiple areas. Like if you had this huge layout, you were modeling probably that state, somewhere in that state or that country you were in, but not branching out to other countries or other regions or provinces or states or whatever. You were pretty much just keeping where you were at. And then Wonderland came out and modeled probably 12 different countries all in the same layout. And you were thinking, what, you could do this? That's incredible. And that is probably one of the best things I think for the model railroading world that could have happened, because that alone helped the world to open their eyes. Oh, you can have different countries or different parts of the country in your one layout if you wanted to. You don't have to just stick to a 10-mile square layout for you that you grew up in.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, I look around me on this layout, I've got things which are kind of borrowed from Austrian modeling, from US modeling, and you can kind of bring them together so they don't necessarily look out of place next to each other, but you can bring some great things about overseas modeling. And it's one of the things I've really enjoyed looking through, things like scenic accents from Woodland Scenics, some of these really great little cameo scenes, which are probably just like a little bit of a slice of American life. But actually bringing them into my layout to have these fun little cameos.
Yes.
And it's a bit like what we talked about before we started recording about the rewarding nature of modeling. If you got that one little cameo in there that maybe not everybody would get, but those that do, it's like it makes you feel really good, say at an exhibition or a show, when you're looking at a model and you see something, you think, I know what they're doing there. It's like a cameo from a film, or a cameo from a book, or something like that. And the fact that you see it and understand it is very rewarding. And I love to have stuff like that. So, for example, inside the mountain that I've got, there's a tunnel through it. I'm actually wanting to build like this sort of secret alien autopsy type scene in there, so that you wouldn't see that. It doesn't impinge on the rest of the layout. But I've got a camera train, and the idea is that when you run the camera train through, then you see a secret world with like shady men in suits and aliens on a table.
You could like recreate the Men in Black headquarters.
Yeah.
All the aliens walking around with Men in Black suits.
Yeah. Or you could have like Santa's secret grotto in there. There's a range of possibilities. And again, it's coming back to this kind of imaginative thing. The other thing, I'm just looking down here if I can actually get it out. It's sort of, things tend to get shoved underneath, and then other things get in front of it. But I actually built. I really wanted to try modeling winter. So I built a small model, and it's got things like ice skaters on a frozen pond. And I've got a mechanism, so you turn a little hand crank, and what's actually happening is the surface of the pond slowly spins. But of course, the ice skaters are going around. And, it's like fun, different ways of doing things. You're trying to make the buildings look like they've got icicles on. I just love that kind of different creativity.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's pushing your limit. It's thinking out of the box. It's doing something different.
Yeah.
Instead of what everybody does. I don't know. So like I was saying before we started the podcast or the recording, I don't know how much you know of me, but the one thing in the model railroading in the 187 scale world that I'm most famous for is this let me turn my camera around if I can figure that out. Is this a Hollywood Backlot tour module?
Universal Studios.
Yes. Yeah, so I have the Ghostbusters firehouse from the
Oh,
movie over there
the
with the
state.
Ghostbusters car. And I've got two more Ghostbusters cars here, and they light up. They have LEDs in them that do all the lighting, and they got sirens in them. And then that second building is from the movie American Graffiti.
Yeah,
It's Mel's Diner.
and I see there's the clock tower from Back to the Future
Yes.
as well.
Yeah, clock tower, and then you got the hotel from Psycho and the Psycho
Oh, the
house.
Bates Motel. I love it.
Yeah. And then the car to go along with it in the front. And then here you got the Munsters house from the TV series, The Munsters.
Oh, that is amazing.
And then up in that display case, not that you can see it from here, but there's a Munsters coach. I keep it in there because this darn module gets so dusty and I don't want dust all over the cars. But yeah, that's kind of what I become most famous for is doing like movie scenes and whatnot. I have a whole bunch of well, I can't say a whole bunch, but I've got quite a few Back to the Future DeLoreans that I've made for customers, and with the 3D printed figurines to go with them. And that's kind of what I've got really famous for, because I built that Ghostbusters car off of a 3D print on a Shapeway, and then I instantly painted it, put the decals on it, and then I sent it over to a friend to have him do all the LED work. And that was the very first 187 HO scale Ghostbusters car with working lights. And the internet and Facebook blew up and went crazy over that. And that's kind of what I got pretty famous for, was doing that. And that's what I like to do. I like to have mostly those scenes in multiples all put on like a table or a display, so you see it and you're like, I remember that. Oh yeah, I just saw that in a TV show, or I saw that in a movie. Like, and eventually have a whole entire layout full of just famous stuff, only famous stuff. Because I wanted all to be like eye-popping candy for you to be like, oh, I remember that from when I was a kid.
I mean, it's like one of the things I've got here. This, I don't know whether you got the our version of Life on Mars, the TV series, but the UK one, this was the car that Detective Gene Hunt drove, and it's just a Ford Cortina, which was like a very, very popular car through the 1970s in the UK. And it's just little things like that, and it's exactly it's got the right number plate. It's got the color, the vinyl roof on it, and just little things like that. And I like to park it places with a couple of figures, so it looks like turned up to punch some information out of a suspect, that kind of thing. I've got Santa Claus on this layout as well, and I have him just tucked away behind. There's a little bit that you have to kind of crane your head round to see it. And there's like Santa Claus and a couple of little helpers just waving to passing trains.
That's nice. Just those little tiny details can really make a layout just that much better, because you could look at something and think you've seen, oh, I've seen this in every other layout. And then something little passes you by and you're like, I saw that little thing you did. I see it.
Yeah, I've got the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror as well over in the corner.
Do you really? That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just like it's a tree house in the tree, and it's Bart Simpson's tree house.
That's really cool.
And very few people look at it and go, Treehouse of Horror, but I know it is.
Yes.
And when somebody does, somebody looks at it and go, you've done Bart Simpson's Treehouse of Horror. It's like, yes, and people feel so rewarded for seeing like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got the Von Trapp families up on the mountain, just sort of like la 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 across the top.
Nice.
So there's
that's great.
Yeah. And also we have I don't know where it's gone actually. Somewhere on the lake. Oh, there it is. The other thing I like to do is we've got the Doctor Who police box as well.
Yes.
And it's not fixed down. What I like to do, and because my layout gets seen a lot on camera, I like to move it around, so it's not fixed down, and it just
it wouldn't be fixed down in the TV series, right? It kind of goes all over the place where it needs to go to let the people out of the phone booth.
So it would just sort of, I just sit finding somewhere where it'll be in shot. So it would just sort of turn up on the model. And
Yeah.
you know, it's not something that I would refer to. It would just be there. And what I
Right. And
found,
you have to look at it to say, oh, hey, wait a minute. I know where that's from. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
good.
Because of course, I mean, there were real things that look like this in the UK. So it's dependent on placing as to whether it's the doctor's phone box or whether it's a period correct phone box. But it's a little bit of fun. And what I've
Right.
found is that when I do the live streams, people actually start trying to spot it. And it kind of this fun game where people were
That's nice.
scrutinizing the model, trying to see where little things like that had turned up
Yes.
at that time.
That's really cool. That's actually really genius. If you could, I'm not telling you what to do, but if you did like a little contest every Monday and just whoever says it first, if they say where they see it, you get like a thank you card or a sticker from you or something, you know, or you
It's
get a free decal from that box card that you
they're
got.
too good. I'm sure some of these people have. I've got it. Must have it up on a massive screen, and they're just like
Right, right.
eyes out on stalks.
Yeah.
It's just little things like that, and that is all about the fun of the hobby.
Oh,
Little things
definitely.
like that that really make people feel it's a much more rewarding hobby. You
Yeah,
know,
and it brings real life, like something you're watching on TV every day or weekly or something, or in a big huge movie that you've loved your whole life. It brings your real life down in miniature scale for them to see and go, "Hey, I love that show or that movie. You got it on your layout. That is the greatest thing ever."
yeah, yeah, and I've seen online as well. A lot of people like to bring in those little cameos like that into their model.
Yes.
And a lot of it is actually, it's usually sort of like 80s, 90s TV references seem to be really, really popular. So I still need to get a GMC A-Team van. I'd love to have the full
Yes.
A-Team.
That would be cool. I,
Yeah,
I want that too. I got a friend that's building me one, but he's taking forever. That's fine. He can take as long as he wants. He's making me one. So, hey, I don't care.
and the Colombo Peugeot as well. You can just imagine him rocking up. It's like, just one more thing, ma'am.
That would be cool. Yeah, that's really neat. That's part of this hobby that I think I really, really, truly love because I'm modeling it because I'm trying to do something different that not a lot of people are doing. I don't want to do what everybody does. I find that to kind of be boring. And then if I built it the same way you built it, what's the point of me building it?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know? So
Just
I try to do that same thing is put little tiny things all over the place for you to see and your eye to like pop open and be like, I just love that. You see the people's reaction and it brightens their day. And
yeah, yeah.
you could you could go to a train show and see the same thing throughout the whole train show. And then you go to that one person that has those cameos all over the place, and that's what they're like really hugging around and looking for and everything, why they just walked right past the other things that looked all the same.
And it doesn't have to be a kind of like a TV reference. It could, I've
It can
seen
be
some
anything.
great cameos where people have modeled something like a road traffic incident on a road. So there'll be a couple
Hmm.
of cars that have crashed, and then you've got that whole scene with the policeman, with that you can have an ambulance, you can have all the onlookers, and it's
Yeah.
little scenes like that. It's almost like a small slice of life. Or you could
Right,
have
right.
a football field, and there'll be a game going on. So you've got all the players on the field. You've got the crowd, and you can little personalized slices of life,
Yeah.
but done in such a way that sucks you in. You
I
can have
don't
a little
I don't
back
know if the
behind houses where there's children playing, and you can have like a hopscotch thing drawn on the
right.
and you have the children like frozen through the pose of playing it. And it's little
Yeah.
things like that, I think, that really bring the modeling to life. And when you see them, it draws you into the model and rewards the deeper you look.
I think the first thing I remember something like that that was super memorable and super neat and super uh, time capsuling. And I don't know if you guys have it in Europe, but out here in the U.S. we used to. It's not so much anymore, but we used to have drive-in movie theaters where you drive your car up and you're all parked in a parking lot and you're looking at this big, huge, like 50-foot screen. And when you can model that on a railroad and they're showing like an old black and white TV or movie or something, that was like the first thing that reminded me of like, oh, you're bringing like real life into a situation where I went there as a kid. I remember seeing a big, huge movie on the screen parked in the car. And, like if you're modeling only steam era, at least in the US, you're hardly ever going to see a working steam engine in your whole life because it's very rare out here. Unlike the UK, I think there's still modern day steam movement today, but here it's not. So if you're only modeling that time era, you're modeling something that nobody's even seen right now anymore. And if you're young, say 20 years or younger, you're going to look at that and be like, I don't even understand any of this. This is way before my time and I don't care. But when you put something like a cameo like that on, it brings that person into the layout and it makes them excited.
I mean, I'm of an age where I barely remember the last vestiges of steam working in the UK. Sort of, it just tipped over into the early 1980s with industrial steam. It had long gone off the main line, but you'd find places like coal mines where they were still clinging on to this method of moving stuff, I guess because the fuel was free. But
right.
Anybody who's younger than me would never have seen them in actual commercial usage. But in the UK, we're quite lucky that quite a lot of the old railway locomotives, I think there's about 300 or 400 of them, were saved for posterity.
That is awesome.
Partially through circumstance, partially through some great efforts of people who kind of saw that history was disappearing and thought, we want to keep a slice of this. There's something magic about this. And when it's gone, it's gone. But certainly railway modeling allows you to preserve that slice of life that you just can't see in the real world.
Yeah, it definitely does. And it's all walks of, history, life, and present life, all in the model railroading world. Because I mean, you can have a scene of the Old West with cowboys and Indians and a steam locomotive and all desert land, or you can have, modern day, a bustling city with modern day diesel engines running all over the place and newer cars and whatnot. And you can model it all, and it's really neat to see that, because in a lot of other hobbies, say RC planes, RC cars, boats, the rocket ships that go up 100 feet in the air, whatever, none of them are putting this much detail in any of the things they're building. It's model railroading, which is the only kind of hobby that incorporates everything from buildings to people to cars to roads to scenery, electrical, lighting up the buildings and the street lights and whatnot. It's got it all, and no other hobby kind of really fills all those boxes.
Yeah, it's very complete. It's a complete slice of life, and it doesn't necessarily have to be just the trains that move. I've seen some fabulous work done with systems where you can make the cars do things like buried wire in the road. I've seen things where even boats will move on the water because
Wonderland's the leader of all of that.
Yeah, and they just kind of it just pulls it along with magnets underneath the surface, so it kind of.
I mean, they got that working airport that was like $4 million. That's incredible.
You watch it, you think, I still don't understand how they made that work. But it's when you see stuff like that, I guess it kind of shows you. It's like, well, it's definitely possible because they've done it. And then it fires you up like, well, how could I do that myself? And, I always say to people, there's no one right way of doing anything in this world, because I always get really annoyed with people online who'll go, oh, no, you have to do it in this way. And I call them the fun police. It's like, oh, no, you must do it this way because every other way is wrong. And the first thing I always say to people when they ask for advice is there is no one single right way of doing anything. Experiment, be creative, and you will find a method that works for you, and you can feel very rewarded that it's turned out. And actually, you might find a way of doing something that's better than what anybody else has been doing because you allowed yourself to think outside the box. And, you know, and at the end of the day, if we all went around saying, oh, no, 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 you have to do it this way, we'd still be using dyed sawdust and felt for the scenery. And, you know, we've
Yes,
so moved on from that because people did experiment and try something new.
right. That's definitely 100% correct, because even the people that were doing it 50 years ago with the same exact products, say you only had 100 different products to use for, you know, scenery, you were still gluing it probably a little bit different than maybe your neighbor was, or the person down the street or whatever. And you were probably laying, you know, some people could have like used actual glue to lay down a building, or some people could have used tape, some people could have used, you know, hot glue gun. Who knows? As long as you figure out a way that it works for you and you're happy with it, then that's the right way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So watching your YouTube videos and trying to be a part of your Monday Club, I think the name of my channel that I have on YouTube gets blocked because I see when the video portion comes up of the people that have asked questions or whatever, mine never pop up, but I do see it in the other one where I just made the comment. And I think the half-ass is probably
Yeah,
blocked
I know.
in your YouTube. I
It's
don't know.
I think YouTube is very, very conservative when it comes to letting certain things through. Uh,
Yeah.
and you know, I don't block people, but for some reason,
Yeah, I didn't think it was you.
yeah,
I think it's YouTube. But either way, trying to be a part of the conversation or whatever, and never really having my comment shown up on your screen.
yeah. I'm sorry about that.
It's not your fault. What do you really, really love about the hobby in general? What is it that draws you to keep going, to keep building, to wanna just keep going?
I think for me, it's pure creativity. I'm a very creative person. You know, in a former life, I wrote books. I've got 14 published books to my name. I worked in
Wow.
television. I you know, on I'm trying to think of some of the productions that I don't know whether you get Torchwood in the US.
Oh, that's like, yes, it's on BBC
Yeah.
America. Yeah.
So I did some work on logistics with the on the lighting side. You know,
Wow.
it's nothing as glamorous as being there doing the lighting, but you know, I you know, nuts and bolts. I brought the lighting down from the big store in Manchester, and then they'd set it up on location. Then it get packed back in the van, and I would take it back.
Yeah.
Broadchurch was another one. It was one of the Star Wars films, but I never knew which one I was working on because they were so secretive.
Right.
We think it was either Force Awakens or it might have been Rogue One, I'm not sure. But it was all on the lighting logistics side. And before that, I worked on radio. So I was like the graveyard shift DJ for a couple of stations, which is
That's
actually
cool.
great. People think like it's almost like punishment. It's like, no, you will be on from 2 a.m. in the morning through to 6 a.m. and nobody will listen to you. And I,
You can play whatever you want.
exactly, yeah. So we used to do amazingly creative stuff because we knew the station manager was fast asleep. So it wasn't like he was going to tune
Right,
in.
right, right.
Oh my God, they're juggling
That
pizzas in the
if
studio.
if
And
you watch that Howard Stern movie, that's how he did it. He started off late at night too and was doing whatever he wanted, and then got more and more famous.
yeah. And, you know, and people have often said to me, it's like, oh, you seem to be quite a natural when it comes to doing the Monday Club. And I don't have the heart to say to them, it's like, you know, there's 20 years of experience
Right.
behind this. You know, not necessarily doing YouTube, but, you know, back in 1997, I think it was, I rocked up at a local station. It's like, give me a job. And, you know, I was still at school at the time. And I was just like, I wanted to be involved. I wanted to be creative. You know, and I did things like radio plays, which on commercial radio in the UK, it's almost unheard of because it's very expensive and doesn't get you the return, the financial return that just playing music with adverts in between does. You know, so I got involved with doing that. I did the sound effects for a radio play. And I just loved the idea of like, we need this noise. How are we going to get it? You know, we almost like George Lucas did with things like Star Wars, where he just sent people out, like just find weird noises. I want it to sound real, but I want, you know, this back, and we'd go like that. Like we needed traffic noise, so I just jumped in my car with a big reel-to-reel battery-powered player, and I just stuck a microphone.
Wow.
And things like that, and you know, I had a great time. And I guess that's all fed into my love of creativity, of pushing the boat out. And it's, you know, it's why I got involved with things like Biggest Little Railway, because I've got this background in broadcasting, and it was just great fun to be able to push the limits and do things that people told us were impossible. And I always hate it when somebody says to me, you can't do that. I'm the kind of person who goes, well, what if I want to? And, you know, I like to try and find a solution to doing things. And you know, it might not always succeed, but sometimes the enjoyment is that experimentation, that pushing yourself on. And that, I think, is what I really love about the modeling. You know, you think, you know, I want to build a mountain and I want it to look like a mountain, and it's figuring out how you're going to do that. And you know, because you can't just make a mound of mud and like push a hole through it for your trains to go through, because in model form you can't do them the same way. So you're looking at products, you look even things that aren't necessarily sold for model railroading use, and thinking, how can I repurpose this? I find myself going around DIY stores, garden centers, just looking at things, and in the back of my head I'm thinking, what can I use this for? And you know, back to, we talked about the Great Model Rail Challenge, and one of the things that they did on that was the Scratch Build Challenge. A lot of what that, you know, some people said, well, oh, this is really stupid, and it wasn't. And you know, a lot of other people loved it because it was taking regular household objects. You know, they do things like, here's a glass, make something out of it, and you have to incorporate that creatively into the model. And what actually comes out of that is some really great things which you might not necessarily think about doing. So like one of the most memorable ones for me is somebody on our team, they got given a kind of a metal mesh bird feeder. One look at it, at this metal mesh, and went, well, if I get some wire cutters and sort of cut it out, flatten it up, and they cut it into security fencing is what we
I remember that.
And it looks like security fencing, and you think, yeah, this is great, from this really cheap throwaway product that they've just found like in the $1.99 aisle at the local hardware store, has come this great railway modeling. And you know, I think that sometimes that's the bit that some people maybe don't look at, and they say, oh, isn't this hobby expensive? Look, all these products that are sold for the hobby are really expensive. But actually, if you're creative, you can use very cheap things, very inexpensive things, to create the effect you want. And it's actually a lot more rewarding when you look at the end result and you think, that looks great. And when other people look at it and go, oh, how did you do that? Because that looks great. And you think, I just bought a bag of grit, like budgie grit, or you know, stuff that you put at the bottom of a pet cage, and use that because it looked right.
Yeah, and you walked away with something that could have cost you, say, 100 pounds, and you walked away with it with only maybe 15 to 20 pounds into it all together, and you pulled off the same exact, you know, detail.
Yeah, I mean, it's like all the ballast on this layout, and it's quite a big layout. There's about 200 yards of track on the top, which for the UK is quite a large layout, and it's all ballasted with a big sack of dried sand that was sold in a do-it-yourself store for when you lay block paving paths, and you kind of brush this dry sand which locks and keys all the bricks together. and it costs about £4, so like $5 for a huge bag of this sand is all it costs, and it ballasted this entire room, every single
Wow.
ballast. And you look at it and you think, well, it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money.
It really
when
doesn't.
you look at what is available out there.
Right. You're 100% correct, because a lot of people only can see what's right in front of them. They only see what's advertised in the model railroad magazine, or they see on the internet, and they're like, okay, well, I have to have this in order to create that. Instead of being able to think outside the box and think, what can I use instead of that expensive item, and do it for a lot cheaper. Like, I found out you can get you can go to like the DIY store and get like ribbon, ribbon tape that you can use for like gift wrapping or whatever. You get the clear white kind or the clear silver kind. And if it's thin enough, it's weaved in such a way to where you can cut it thin enough, and it's almost to scale a chain link fence.
Right.
Because the weave is you can see through it for one, so it's obviously not weaved too tight, but it's tight enough to make it to where it looks to scale for HO scale actual chain link fencing. And you can pick up a ribbon that's probably like 100 feet long for probably $5, and you've got chain link fencing forever, the rest of your hobby career.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to cost you a lot. And what I've actually found in a lot of instances is these are probably the same products that will get packaged up in little small quantities.
Yes, right.
So, like stick an extra nought on the price tag and sell that
right.
to others. It's the same stuff. I
mean, essentially it kind of is, without you knowing exactly what that big huge company decided to put in that bag. I mean, you think that it most likely is the same stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like some of the bushes as well. I've got loads of they're from a variety of different. I don't want to name the companies now because I'm about to say where you can get them for
right.
But the kind of clump, I think they call it clump foliage, and
yeah.
Is they've just got a decorator's sponge, like these big sponges that you'd sort of like stipple paint on with, and they've just got them in like shades of green, and then they fit them through a liquidizer. And as to how long you let them kind of get chewed up by the blades is sort of how fine that scatter is, down to the really fine stuff that you'd maybe use to make tree foliage. They've just like put a sponge in a blender and walked away for 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah, you just have to have that know-how, you think outside of the box. You clearly have it. And that can save your hobby career of staying in the hobby compared to, using your whole entire paycheck for this hobby.
Yeah, because I mean, this hobby can get very expensive. It is possible to spend a lot of money in this hobby, and sometimes it's great to get creative because you can save yourself a lot, and the actual end results can often be better. Things like I call them like toilet brush trees, because they look like the brushes that you clean your toilet with.
Right.
And you pay a lot of money for them, and yet if you buy a box of I'm just seeing if I can find the box. Nothing's where I left it. Oh, here it is. But there's a product here. It's called Sea Foam. So I've got a box here, and one box goes a long way. And all it is it's like a natural product. You probably get it in the US as well.
Oh yeah.
A box of this, a can of hairspray to use as the spray glue, and then just scatter different colors of short static grass and foliage scatter, and all of a sudden you've got trees that look so much better than the very generic store-bought trees, and you get a fraction of the price. I mean, that one box there would do most people's model railroad, a small model railroad. This one box, which is looking at the price on it, that'd be about $30 at most. And we pay a lot more for stuff in the UK because they know they can get away with it. But that's quite cheap for all the trees that you're ever going to need on your layout.
Well, your money's worth more than our money. I think right now it's at least a quarter or half more. So every dollar for us is like $1.50 or £1.50.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's £19.95. So I'm guessing maybe 26 to 30 bucks for that, something like that.
Yeah.
But they tend to charge us more. What they're quite cheeky in some respects. What they will do is they will like your dollar price, they'll charge us the same price but in pounds, so obviously we're paying more.
Right.
They do that because they can get away with it. It's what they call, what if the market's used to paying that, why would you give them a discount?
Yeah. Well, I went to the UK in London, and we went to Bath, and we went to several other places out there in the UK. And I was amazed just how different the UK is compared to the States. And it's because before then I'd never been anywhere else but the States. So you see it on TV, you see it in movies, whatever, but until you see it with your own eyes and then you actually drive on it, completely different. And we took a lot of the elevated trains, like the L trains or whatever you guys call them out there, like the reverse subways, ones that are up in the air. Yeah, you guys have lifted trains, right? Like around the city?
In London, the Docklands Light Railway, was that?
Yeah. We took a lot of that to get around because everywhere we went, we were in walking distance from one of the, boarding areas. And to think like what you're doing, you're modeling somewhere in the UK for railroad, and most of your hobby shops are all UK based, models and whatnot. And then same thing with out here, most of our stuff is all American stuff. But to think that there's life all in these different countries and people can model these different things, and to see, like, I watch your Monday Club and you got the cameras moving in different directions, to see your model railroading is, as much as it's the same as a US model railroad, it's what's on your layout that's different. Buildings, trains, and how you run them. I see there's a steam engine that you run. I don't know what the steam engine is, but that thing looks like it's going at least 80 miles an hour at some points of your layout. And I've noticed that in a lot of YouTube videos that a lot of UK steam that runs today for expositions or whatever, it's like they got that thing full throttle. And out here in the States, we're not going to run it nearly that quick because it might break.
They do break in the UK, but we tend to have a mentality of like, it's working now. We're just
well, and you got to be on time. Your railroad is one of the most on-time railroads in the world.
Yeah, and I think as well, one of the things as well that maybe Americans don't quite realize just how small this country is. So when we model UK railways, what we're actually doing is that's the equivalent of you guys just picking one of the states and modeling that state. So we don't get anywhere near the dramatic variety of countryside. So say you guys in America, you could model somewhere in Utah or Nevada, and you have that
completely different.
Yeah. You could go to somewhere like Pennsylvania or Rhode Island, and you've got a very, very different climate, ecosystem of trees, and plants, and greenery. And even the topography, you can go from somewhere like Monument Valley, which looks like it's straight out of a Clint Eastwood Western.
Yes.
Or you could go to somewhere like Maine, and it actually probably doesn't look that much different to like
just a lot more trees. Yeah.
So
I didn't think about it that way though. So is Scotland? I know Scotland's part of your continent. I've never been to Scotland, but is Scotland pretty based roughly on the same kind of trains as UK?
It's all the same. I mean, you can get on a train at London King's Cross Station and not get off it until you reach somewhere like Aberdeen, which is right up in Scotland. You just use the same train. Because it's like I said to you before, the UK is basically, for you guys, think of it as being like a medium-sized state. That's everything that's here. So if you go right up into the north of Scotland, Yes, the scenery does change, but not radically change. You know, it's not completely unrecognizable from the scenery that you left behind when you were at the south coast. You know, I'm trying to think how many miles it is. If you drove from the south coast all the way up to when you reach ocean again at the top, I think it's only about 600 to 700 miles. That's all it is, top to bottom.
Wow.
So like,
You
you
did
know,
through it in 2 days,
I mean,
basically.
I,
2 long days.
because in the UK, you know, we think that driving 100 miles is a long distance because, relatively speaking, you cover a big chunk of the country. But I know you guys
Right.
think
Right.
of, like, oh, we're going on we're going for a drive. It's 1,200
Yeah.
miles, and you know,
Right, right.
if we drove 1,200 miles, we would think that, you know, it would be like an epic ordeal for us.
Yeah, you'd be going from one side of the ocean to the other side, then back.
Well, I mean, like 1,200 miles would put us somewhere in the south of France. You know, we could
Right,
be in
right.
the country, and the people would be speaking funny to us.
Yeah,
Baguettes
exactly.
and onions.
That's funny. So I'm guessing you've lived out there your whole life.
Yes, I
Have
have.
you been able to travel throughout the world in
Um,
your careers?
a little bit, but I'm mostly around Europe. What you find with certainly people of my age and before, yeah, we go abroad for holidays, but it would tend to be somewhere like the south of France, Spain, and maybe if you were lucky, you'd get down to the Canary Isles, which are just off they're off the coast of Africa, but they're actually a Spanish territory. So when you go out there, it's just like Spain but hotter. And then one
Right.
year, we were lucky enough, we did the Disney thing, so we flew out to Florida.
Oh, okay.
So the only bit of the US that I've actually been to is Florida. You know, when we did the Disney experience, the Universal Studios, Busch
Right.
Gardens, and we've actually got family out there. Part of the family emigrated in, I think it was the 1950s, and they actually live at Tampa Bay. So we took the opportunity to spend a week with them and actually get to know a part of the family that
That's nice.
we didn't know about. But that's as far as I've really been abroad, and I've done Germany as well. But I'd love to travel, but it's just it's not like in the US where you could just say jump in a car and you could just drive coast to coast.
Right.
You know, you guys, you don't have to worry about passports. You don't have to worry about
Not
learning
really.
the language because, you know, by and large, the people at the one side of the country still speak the same language as they do
Yeah.
the other. But with it, you know, you have to go through where you go through France, Holland, Germany, into
All
Poland.
different languages.
Yeah, you could end up somewhere that speaks Russian. So there's, you know, it's a very different environment because you're crossing international borders so frequently.
Yeah.
You know, over here, a
Se-
country is about the size of a large US state.
7 years ago, we went to France and we did Paris, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And we did Austria, Switzerland, and and Germany in one day. So we were just on the tips of the country, basically.
Yeah,
And going into each country, you had to use the different money because they didn't want to switch it. And so
yeah,
we had to change the money over. And then you had to, you know, I don't have the language behind me to know everything they're saying. So it was nice that they spoke enough English to understand me. But to remember that you've lived and learned and heard your whole life of how, you know, some countries say thank you and you're welcome and hello and stuff. You remember it from movies and TV shows your whole life, but you never think you're going to use it in real life. And then when I think it was Switzerland or Austria, and you say danke to say thank you. You're like, oh my gosh, that's real. That's real. Like
yeah,
it's not just on TV. Like people really speak this way.
yeah, yeah.
It's such a neat culture. And it was actually the first time in France that I saw a bullet train fly past me when I'm doing 80 miles an hour on the freeway. And this thing flew past me like I was standing still.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
don't have nothing that fast in the US,
Yeah, I mean,
train wise.
that's the thing I always find surprising that in the US, you don't have these high speed trains, and yet you've got such a
Why?
bigger distance to
Yes.
travel. because like, you know, here in the UK, we've got, you know, we had the HST. We actually, there was Great Northeastern Railways ran a Eurostar in the UK. The East Coast Main Line high speed trains doing, I think that they're cleared for up to about 140 miles an hour. Over in Germany, you've got the ice train. In France, you've got the TGV. You know, you go out to Japan, they've got the Shinkansen.
Right.
So there's all this high street.
And they go faster and faster and faster.
Yeah. And then in the US, you've got something that plods along at 40 miles an hour. And
Right.
we've got thousands of miles to do.
We're never going to get anywhere in this speed.
So put your foot down a bit.
Yeah, it was so neat to see that. And we when we were last out there, we went to a automotive or transportation museum where they had some old rusted out locomotives outside, and they had some nice restored ones inside, and a lot of European cars and whatnot. And it's so, they didn't have any model railroading in there though, which I thought they could have put in there. They missed a good option for that to happen, but it wasn't very crowded when we went, so I don't know if they even had the money to probably do that, but it would have been neat to kind of see model railroading, because we didn't go there for the hobby side of, you know, going on vacation or whatever. So we just kind of went out there to see the sights and the old cities and the old towns and whatever. But do you I remember listening to your Monday Club, and somebody asked you if you were gonna, if you fancied modeling something else, and you thought about modeling a US you know, layout at one point. Do you have a specific idea where you want to model, or is it kind of just a genre of the whole US somehow?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much aware that my perspective is from the outside looking in.
Right.
So, I guess I'm quite heavily influenced partially by things like films, but I also really like, there's a few YouTube channels which you kind of really open my eyes to some of the railroad practices in the US. There's a guy called Jawtooth, and he'll go out and he'll film these railroads. And there's a lot of places like I think it's Lagrange.
Yeah.
Where the trains just run down the middle of the main street, and that fascinates me, because we don't have that anymore in the UK, and I don't think it ever was a big thing. But over in the US, there's in Syracuse, there's the New York Utica and Syracuse Railroad, I think it is, and there's a bit of that again. The main line runs down the street, and you know, they've got like sidings into buildings just coming straight up the main line in the middle of the road, and stuff like that really fascinates me, where you see there'll be a big diesel locomotive with a single box car, and shunted in, and it's a very laid back, sedate way of operating.
They only cruise like 10 to 15 to 20 miles an hour because it's during the main street. They don't want to vibrate every building and break all the glasses or whatever. But it's different.
You have some of these lines as well where you know, the line can just not be used for 15-20 years, and then you send a guy down there with a lawnmower, and then the next train goes down there. And you know, over here they're just so quick to rip stuff up. You know, we've got rail lines that, you know, maybe only shut 10 years ago, and they've already ripped the track up. You know, they don't hang about. And yet, you know, in the US, you kind of tend to leave things, you know, just in case we need it again, sort of thing.
Right. I live on the East Coast of the United States in a state called North Carolina. And I'm from California, where that's what they do in California. If it's old enough and abandoned long enough, they tear it down and rebuild over. And it doesn't have to be that long. Out here on the East Coast, we have railroad tracks that haven't been used in 50 years that are still laying on the ground with trees growing in the middle of them. And you think, there's some good metal, there's some good steel that all you got to do is take it down to the junkyard, if you could pick it up, and you'd get a lot of money for that. But it just sits there like nothing. And my son had a friend that lived literally right next to an abandoned railroad track. And he said, and his friend said, every once in a while, you can hear a train horn going right through it, like it's a ghost train. but there's no train going through it because there's trees that are 20 to 30, 40 feet high growing right in the middle of the track. So there's no way a train's going through it anyways. But he says it's so loud and so clear, it's like it just passed us. That'd be kind of cool. I wouldn't want to model a train track with trees growing through it and just have a horn blowing to make it sound like a ghost train, but it would be neat to witness.
I mean, certainly in the UK, there's something really interesting about modeling things that are decrepit, that are run down, rather than brand new and shiny. And I always like to have a kind of a little bit of disused rail line, maybe with some abandoned cars on.
Yes,
So
yes.
I don't know, I just see if it's, I think if I just move that down a bit. So just here, these box cars here, they're glued to the track, they don't move, and everything, the track's underneath them, but I've used trees and bushes and actually tried to model that kind of abandoned, left to nature look, because I think it's a really interesting thing to model.
It definitely is.
Decrepit things that is interesting to model.
We have a few places out here in the US that are like that, but I've never been to not one. I've seen photographs online with them, and they're so neat because it's like a ghost town that has been forgotten. Like they just parked all these trains here, the engines, everything's ready to go. They parked it, and then the world took over. And there's no way you were going to move it today. But I mean, the states just restored a big boy steam engine, the biggest steam engine ever to be made. And I remember as a kid going to the park that it was parked at, and you can climb on it. You can twist the knobs all in the cab. And to watch them move that thing that looked like it was never going to move because the weather is completely rusted everything away, and restored that thing to make it move, that was really neat.
Yeah, I mean, there's a preserved railway near here, actually, and I can remember as a child my father taking me there, and there'd be locomotives that were just these rusted hulks that had come straight from the scrapyard. And I can remember sat looking at it. Was a Stanier 8F, which is a kind of a big freight locomotive in the UK, and they got all over the world during the Second World War. They kind of got loaned to, I think some of them got as far out as China. It's quite unbelievable how far these got out there. And this thing was just an absolute wreck, and it looked like it would never move again. And that would be, what, about 30 years ago now? And that locomotive looks like it's just left the shop where it was built. It's pristine. Wow. And it's running. And it's just so magical to see the skills, the engineering skills, that can take something that was thrown away in the 1960s as life expired, and made it work and live again. And it's just something so great about that.
Yeah, that, and you know, the neat thing about our hobby is you can create that in miniature scale. You know, you can go from something that just came off of the shelf in a store, that it was running for 30, 40, 50 years of its life, then park it along a deserted track, weather it all up, make it all messy again, make it look like the earth has took it all back over. And then if you wanted later on, just wipe that weathering off, repaint it, and make it look like it just got restored.
If I reach back here, there's so something like this wagon. I don't know if you can see that. So it looks all really badly rusted out, and it's all rusty in the middle. When it comes out of the box, it's like brilliant, clean grey plastic, and it doesn't look real. It looks too clean.
Right, so fake, like a toy.
And you know, you can make something look like it has led a really, really hard life. And you know, if you really want to get creative, you can then kind of soften the plastic with a soldering iron, not touching it because it will go all gloopy. But then you kind of get a screwdriver or something, and you can put dings in all of the panels, make it look like it's been beaten up.
Yes,
you get some really great effects with something that actually is not rusty because it's made of plastic, and you know, it's only 6 months old because you know, it's when I bought it from the shop. But you know, you can make it look like it's 40 years old, and
Right.
has led a very hard life. And you know, I love the creativity that allows you to do that. You know, it's a bit like the guys who do the special effects and the sets for films. You know, they can knock something up out of plywood and shellac
Oh
and
yeah.
scaffolding poles that looks like it's been there for thousands of years.
Oh
And
yeah.
the thing I loved when I was working for the company that did all the lighting logistics was you'd go on the back lot at studios and you'd see some of these things for whatever production that was running at the time. And I remember one, they'd actually built this kind of turn of the last century Parisian street with all the little back alleys and stuff. But when you
That's neat.
went through a doorway into what would have been one of the buildings, it was completely hollow inside.
Right. Yeah.
It was just scaffolding, and they'd made it
Right.
out of
Right.
plywood and you know, but the level of detail was incredible. But not just building it to look like a new building, they'd actually aged and weathered it so that, you know, the plaster and the stucco on the outside looked like it had been weather beaten for 50 years to reach that point. You know, you had windows that looked like they were dirty, that looked like the paint was peeling, but you knew a couple of guys from special effects had 2 days
Just did that.
created
Right.
from nothing, and it was
Right.
just
Right.
amazing to look at. And of course, with as filming techniques get like the camera equipment gets better, so you know they're filming in HD, then 4K, and whatever it is they're up to now. So the detail on these film sets has to be better, otherwise people can sit
Right.
there watching it off the Blu-ray in super high res, and they go, "Oh, look, I can see the join in the plywood that makes that wall," sort of thing. So they're forced to make it so much more
Better.
realistic.
Yeah. But
And
that's funny because I remember when HD in America came out, and our news reporters hated it because they said, "Oh, you can see all the problems in our faces." And they had to step up, just like the modeling people in the movies, TVs. They had to step up, get more different makeup, more better makeup artists, whatever, to make their faces look better.
yeah, but you know, it's you know, in some respects, there's a lot of elements from film and TV that we're kind of carrying over into the modeling world, whether we know it or
Yes.
not. So you know, this
And
way,
vice versa. Yeah.
well,
And
yeah. So you know, there's a lot of the things which you know, that we do as modelers that kind of been taken on board by special effects people to make,
mhm.
you know, your spaceships in space actually look like they're an old spaceship in space.
Right.
The same weathering techniques that we're using to make a boxcar look like it's just gone coast to coast and nobody's given it a wash.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really cool. And the neat thing is with TV and film and commercials that they're doing a lot more to further this hobby, whether we know it in the hobby or not.
Hmm.
Because if they're being able to do it, then that means we'll be able to do it as well. So
Yeah,
we just got to see what's on TV and try to mimic that in our modeling world. So
yeah,
that's neat.
definitely, yeah. And um, what I've seen as well is there's some great tutorials on YouTube. It's like some of these really interesting ideas that has kind of come out of the people who build the miniature sets for films like Star Wars, like Aliens, like Blade Runner. And you know, looking at the techniques that they use and seeing the techniques that have come from modelers to the TV world, but then also picking up ideas, going, they're doing something a bit different there. I can take that back and use that. Things like using real dirt, and I know it almost sounds a bit like a bit odd, but actually graded soil that's
Hmm.
you kind of bake out the organic content so it isn't going to sort of like spring mold up at you, but actually using that kind of really dusty, dirty, just dirt from the garden in a way as being your actual base level to make
Right.
scenery that looks like real dirt. And you know, I've seen that done on film models and thinking actually that's a great idea. I can use that because whenever I build scenery, I always say in my videos that the probably almost as important, if not more important than the variety of colors, is the variety of textures. And perhaps
Yes.
something that a lot of people maybe don't quite realize when you're making a model, that, you know, real things have a texture. Ground has a texture. It's not flat like a piece of
Right.
wood that's been painted. So when you build something in model form, it's really important to try and get a sense of that texture, because the eye sees the texture in terms of like very complex shadows, very complex changes in the colors. And it's little things like that that go up to actually being able to make scenery that looks like real ground. And
Right. Right.
you know, I always say to people as well, there's no rocket science in this hobby. Where people say, "Oh, you know, I don't have the skills to make that." It's like, no, you do. What you've got to have is confidence in yourself.
Yes.
And you're really, the only thing that anybody needs in this hobby is confidence in their own abilities. And it's kind of why, what, you know, when you see me work, I just look like I'm just throwing stuff out, and I do things very, very quickly, because I'm very confident that I know that it, you know, if it looks quite a little not quite right, I can fix that. And by
Yes.
having that confidence, it will look right. And you know,
Right.
anybody who sits there and thinks, you know, this is very basic techniques to create something that looks amazing. If they're confident in themselves, they'll be able to do that. So, you know, I can sit down and go from bare scenery that just looks like somebody's just laid a plaster bandage to finished with grass in a matter of maybe 20 minutes, because it's just a case of being confident in what you're doing. And I think that if there's one thing that I can bring to the hobby, it's trying to nurture that confidence in people to have a go and to experiment and just believe in themselves. And I know we've gone off on a tangent here. I think I
Oh, it's fine. It's all dealing with the hobby. So that's
yeah,
what this is mostly about.
you'll find this with me. I could talk and talk forever.
That's great. Ted Patterson did the same thing. Me and him had an interview for 3 hours, and that's my 3 hours and 8 minutes. That's my longest podcast episode.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I must admit,
we were
when I
talking.
did the first time I was interviewed by Ken, it was a pre-record that we did. I later then went on and did What's Neat This Week live over Skype. But
Right.
we did the interview. I think, yeah, like you said, I think it was about 90 minutes was the recording, but then we sat and chatted for maybe 3-4 hours afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, just, you know, exchanging ideas, and it was just great to be with somebody so enthusiastic about the
Right.
hobby.
Right. And he definitely is. He's probably
Yeah,
one of the best.
definitely. And it's just so easy to talk to him and to get along with him. And he's so knowledgeable.
Right.
And you know, just really enjoyed just hanging out with him. And in a way,
Yeah.
it's a shame that we're kind of separated by thousands of miles and a big ocean, because it would be lovely to just be able to kind of go and hang out with his model railroad. And he's got a great garden railway as well.
Yeah. We
Um,
need to get you out here.
yeah, Ken said the same. He says, yeah, once we can get back to traveling and that, he says, yeah,
Right.
we'll get you out here, and I'd love to do that. Because I mean, like I said, the only bit of America I've ever been to is Florida, so it'd be really nice to see what some of the rest of the US is like.
Yeah, and their scenery is completely different from Florida, 100%
Oh
different, because
yeah,
Florida is just a desert oasis, desert between two parts of water.
yeah, it's like.
St. Louis, there's no water except for the Mississippi River. They have no ocean next to them anywhere close. So,
Yeah, yeah, and I can't wait to at some point be able to get out there. I think it would be absolutely amazing.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm hoping as well to see if we can get Ken over to the UK,
that would be neat.
maybe tie in with one of the shows, and you know, maybe do What's Neat This Week
Right.
from UK one week, and actually
That
get,
would be neat.
would be neat. But you know, kind of get some of the big name UK modelers together on his panel, and you know, maybe at one of the shows like Alexandra Palace down in London, and do something like that. I think it would be a great advert for the hobby.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many other UK podcasters in the HO train modeling world there is besides you. I saw you on the Great Model Railroad Build Off, and then I think YouTube just advertised a video of yours, and then you end up being on Ken Patterson's show, and I was like, we're finally getting somewhere. We're branching the ponds, you know. And so I started, I subscribed to you and I started watching your videos, and then I reached out to you, to see if you wanted to do this. And I've already been friends with Ken, so I think it would be really cool if you being so influential in the UK area, Ken being like the #1 YouTuber and model train guy out here in America, you guys get together, be explosive episode.
Yeah, we need to make GMRC USA happen, I think, and
that would be neat. That would really be cool.
Yeah. maybe Ken and I as the judges.
Right. Right. I mean, you two would, yeah, definitely, you two would be great judges.
Oh,
but Jennifer, I know it's late where you live, because I know what time you started. So
yeah, I've got a clock behind there. We're just coming up here on it's about 25 to 1 in the morning. So
wow.
Don't worry about it. I had a nap earlier on, you see, because I knew I was
coming. Okay.
So, I had an hour's power nap earlier on, so I'm
nice.
I'm not tired at all at the moment.
Well, I just didn't want to keep you up as late as Ken did on his episode.
It was something like I'm trying to think, it was about 2 in the morning my time when we filmed What's Neat This Week.
Yeah, because he starts later in the evening than I do.
Yeah, but I didn't mind, you see, because I purposefully I kind of stayed up late the night before and then got up late, so I'd kind of
okay.
my pattern.
That's
but no,
not bad.
Right. And we actually, Ken and I, we kind of hung out and just over Skype after we'd done What's Neat This Week. We kind of go in and just sort of hung out and chatted, which is great. It's just so easy to get along with. I love that.
Yes. Well, that was like his episode. We talked before the recording started for at least a half hour. And then after I ended the recording, we talked for probably another half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. I don't even know. And we were just talking because he is a very likable and very easy guy to talk with.
Yeah, definitely.
When you get more people involved in that same kind of situation, the conversation could just go forever.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it basically be like 24-hour talk radio about models.
See, you have a TV station out there in the UK that does model railroading. Now we need a radio station that could talk model railroading and syndicate it throughout the world somehow.
Yeah, I suppose so, because you can have people in different time zones would kind of take over.
Right.
Like, so like in the US, like during your normal daytime hours, you'd have US people on.
Right.
During hours.
So when we're sleeping at midnight, there's the other side of the world that's completely awake and taking it.
We got this now. We got this now.
Right. That would be interesting if that's a possibility. Maybe I'll leak that to Ken.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when you look on the internet, there's people who do that kind of thing for things like Star Trek. A lot of people really big on that, and they will discuss the minutia of Spock's brain and stuff. And you think we could do that with model railroading? There's so much to talk about. It's one of the things I found with the Monday Club is that people just like to hang out, and I think we've had some really serious lockdowns over here in the UK where even the shops at the moment are shut other than essential shops, and apparently model shops are not essential because they're not allowed to open. So a lot of people, they can't do the clubs, there's no shows on, you can't go to the pub, you can't socialize, you can't meet up with people. So people have kind of turned to the internet, to YouTube, to keep a sense of reality where there's a lot of people who maybe live on their own, or live with people who have no interest in the same hobbies, and the internet has been so useful throughout this period for people to
Right.
kind of keep in touch with like-minded people. And I've had a lot of people contact me and say that the big thing that the Monday Club has given back to them is this sense that people are still out there. We're still doing the
Right.
hobby.
A community of like-minded people.
Definitely. And it's actually been really important for people's mental health as much as anything, because they haven't been able to do the socializing aspect that they may have been able to do before. And
Yeah.
I'm always really humbled that people, they'll tune in week after week, and we do get quite a big audience.
Oh, you do.
I mean, it varies between about 3.5 and 6,000 people each week that will watch it over the space of a week. Live, we usually have about it's usually between about 1,500 to 2,000 people will actually watch it live during the 2 hours that it's on. And I always feel really humbled that people, they'll come back time after time and tune in because they love the dynamic, they love the chat. And before the lockdown, we used to get guests on. We'd have somebody actually physically here that we could kind of report off, and we haven't
Right.
been able to do that, which is one of the reasons that Zoe sits in, because it does work better when you've got a dynamic where there's two people to kind of bounce off each other.
Yeah.
And
Right.
going back to my radio days, I always used to have a sidekick because it's so much easier.
Oh, it's a must. Yeah.
Interesting. And people like that dynamic. But as soon as lockdown starts to ease, I want to try and get other YouTubers back in, even people from the manufacturing world as well, and just try and get those insights into what other people are doing, what the manufacturers are doing, which I think is really important for the hobby.
Oh, it's definitely important because, I mean, if you're not showing it or talking about it on your show, chances are most people aren't subscribing to other YouTubers that are talking about the same thing. I mean, I'm as a modeler in the railroading world, you, Ken, and maybe 4 other people are the only people I subscribe to, because I don't care about what everybody else is building in their basement. They're not doing product information. They're not doing what's the latest information on companies, but you're doing that. So if they don't subscribe to you and anybody else that's doing the same thing, they're waiting for the next magazine next month to come out to see what's next on the list of products. So you're being able to tell people about it before they even see it in a magazine, probably.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that in fact, I always feel so humbled that manufacturers, have got to know me. They'll actually send me review samples of things so I can actually film it and review it and show people it before the
That's awesome.
magazines can. Because of the publishing cycle of magazines, if something reaches the market just after they've gone to print, it's got to wait a whole month before the next issue. So I get a lot of press releases, but also physical models, and I'm just trying to see somewhere. Oh yeah, here we are. So one of the newest ones I've just reviewed, there's a Danish company called Hellion, very, very kindly sent one of their new Class 25 models, which is a UK outline diesel locomotive from I think early 1960s, and they lasted through to the late 1980s. And because they sent one over, I was able to review it. And I just feel really honoured that they recognise the value of social media and YouTube for reaching the audience. And it takes us right back to what we said at the start about things like GMRC. We're finally breaking that chain where younger people are getting sucked off into games console, things like Xbox, PlayStation, and those younger people don't necessarily read magazines. They somebody who's like 13, 14, 15 probably never
Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah,
that's all they're on.
Get their information. They're on YouTube, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter.
Right.
And if the manufacturers aren't on those, they don't exist to these people. So
Exactly.
it's great to see that some of the manufacturers are really jumping on board with this, with the new frontier. But I feel so honored that they're happy to work with me. And so much so I've just started a job as the video and social media manager for one of the big companies in the UK. I started last week, and that's
Congratulations.
thank you very much. So that's separate from the YouTube channel. It was something that was very important to me because if I'm going to review a manufacturer's products on my YouTube channel, it's got to be free and independent. I've got to be able to say what I really think. And if something's garbage, I have got to be free to be able to say that without coming into work the next day and them going, I think we need a chat in the office with you.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna be working here tomorrow.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was very, very keen on, and credit to the company I've gone to work for, they said, yeah, we totally agree. At the end of the day, the reason we want to hire you is because of your YouTube success, and we don't want to then say, but we need to change this and change this. So as far as they're concerned, that is a separate entity. So the Monday Club will continue as normal. The other videos will continue as normal. And, I'm free to review products from other manufacturers. I have some of the company I work for's products, and, I'm happy to review them as well.
That's great.
But, it's just amazing. And I feel honored to have been accepted into this world, to be allowed to be part of it, and that people will give up a couple of hours of their week to watch my live stream. They'll give up another hour of their week to watch whatever else I'm up to, and people feel invested in the projects that I do, which is absolutely great.
Well, I'll tell you, I watch and listen to your live stream weekly, because you're talking models, you're talking trains, you're talking anything that deals with this hobby. And as much as I'm more into the buildings and the cars, not much less the trains, because I don't have a train layout and I don't plan on making one. I have built some trains for backgrounds and whatnot. Like I built that Back to the Future 3 train.
I was going to ask about that, because as soon as you said you build something, I thought, I wonder, has he done the back?
Yes. And I have all the cars. I have the DeLorean that sits on the tracks, and I have the train to go with it. So I have built trains. It's just cars are more in my. That you're talking about the hobby in general, and I'm all in the hobby, because whatever's new, whatever's neat, whatever's helps me build. You're most likely talking about in one way or another. And then you got the video, the different cameras showing in your layout, so you can see different little things. You can see your trains moving. So it's not just an audio podcast that you're doing, it's a video. I don't even think your show's a podcast. I think your episodes are actual shows, like it's a weekly show.
Yeah, I mean, it's somebody described it. It's a bit like what they call a magazine type show. And I think from the outset, because of technology, the technology that we use has kind of evolved as we've got better at it. But when I built this layout up here, from the outset, I decided I wanted to have cameras that would let people see different views, as if they were here looking at the model. And I just felt that was important. And I suppose it gives me a unique selling point, that's with the Monday Club. It's not just some people talking model railroad, people, talking about stuff and interacting with people in the chat room about, questions that come up. But you can also just sit and watch the trains running. And it's a bit like being at a model railroad exhibition, where you can sit there, you can watch the layouts, but you can also talk with the people behind it. So, how did you make this? What do you think of this product? And I think it's just a format that works really well. And there's not that many other people who are kind of doing that full package.
No, there's not a lot at all. And I've done my research. I mean, my podcast, I feel is mostly a listen only. I feel like people are just putting it on, doing their work at work or driving or whatever, and they're just listening to it in the background because we're not really showing a lot of trains, a lot of cars, a lot of buildings. We're not showing a whole lot on this podcast because this podcast is meant to get inside of your head, figure out what you like about the hobby. It's to get to know the modeler better than just seeing whatever you post on Facebook or, you know, if you don't have your own YouTube channel, which most modelers don't, it's just to get to know them better. So I know that this is a mostly listen only podcast when yours is definitely a watching and listening podcast. And I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, actually, I mean, you can, and I know that there are people who what they'll do with the Monday Club is they will put it on in the background and they might be on their own layout and they'll be doing some modeling.
Yes.
So you can just listen to it. You don't need the pictures, but when you actually view it, there's those extra dimensions that's going on. And I'm just really looking forward to when I can start getting other YouTubers, other modelers in to talk more about the hobby, because I always worry that I talk at great length about nothing much in particular. You know, like it's a typical radio show host. And, you know, when you think right back at the start of my career, working on radio, that's what I did. And I can remember being the dog's body who would run down to the record library to find records for the DJ sort of thing. Or, you know, you'd be in the studio and then you'd get moved up to being one of the posse of sidekicks and stuff.
Right.
And I just remember that it was, you kind of learnt this art of talking at great length about, like, in a very easy to listen to way, not necessarily about anything deep or you know, controversial. And, you know, it was like a bunch of people hanging out, you know, go for some drinks in a bar and just hanging out, shooting the breeze.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I've tried to do with the Monday Club, is it's just a bunch of people who have similar interests, who are just hanging out in a bar, just talking about modeling, but other things creep in.
It's very easy, very casual, and very nice to listen to because in some shows there's an agenda that they're trying to get out in a minimum amount of time, and they got to get it all out, or something might happen. Maybe a sponsor falls out or something, or they said, "Oh, you didn't mention me in this episode." In your Monday Club, and a lot like my podcast, it's so casual. We talk about anything. Sometimes, a lot of times, the conversation skews off of nothing to do with the hobby at all. I mean, being I'm a car guy, we talk about real cars, and it's supposed to be a podcast about modeling, but those modelers like other things. And this whole idea of talking to people was to get inside of you, to see what you like, to understand you better. And so if it skews off to whatever, if you liked building houses or you liked, you know, doing taxes, if you wanted to talk about that, I mean, okay, but try to not, you know, go at great length on that. But
I mean, we do talk about a lot of things, you know, because things just naturally crop up, and it's a very organic process. And I think it's one of the reasons that people like it, because it organically feels like you're just hanging out with some friends, shooting the breeze over a few scoops of beers or whatever. But the only rules that I have is that I won't talk religion and I won't talk politics, because I think they're the two things that just cause acrimonious arguments. So if we're clear of those two, then everything else is fair game. And I think people appreciate that, because you know, so much on the internet, especially, there's always either you know, particularly like a political agenda, and it becomes very tribal, and people find that off-putting.
I mean, you know what was happening in this country, so I tried never to bring that up.
Because
there's so many people that love him, and then so many people that hate him, and if we start talking about it, that's not good.
It's the same the world over. It's, you know, it's the same garbage with different players in the mix. We've got that over here. I know that over in Europe they've got that. You go to Australia.
Well, I think the good thing about you guys is, and in a lot of other countries that have kings and queens, is your queen has been the queen for a very long time. and
Yeah.
probably going to stay the queen for another long time because it doesn't look like her health is going anytime soon.
Well,
But
yeah.
I mean, I guess who really runs the country is maybe the prime minister. I don't know.
I mean,
Is he like the president? Because
yeah,
the queen is the queen, but who
yeah,
makes all the
no
rules?
power whatsoever, and it's what a lot of people, I guess, don't quite realize is the Queen is a figurehead. She can't do
Yes.
anything. She can't change any laws. She can't order any. There's none of this like off with their heads type thing.
Right. Back
She's
in the day.
figurehead, I guess, to provide a continuity. So you get a change of government, a change of political party in charge, but it's always the monarch at the top. And they're the people that do a lot of the going and they call it flying the flag, going and meeting and greeting, lots and lots of handshakes, but they have no real power. But because we're actually I think it's called our constitutional monarchy, so it's a monarchy in it's only a monarchy in name. We're pretty much like you've got in the US, whereas you've got a
Yes.
president, we've got a queen.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it provides a kind of a continuity. From our point of view, we never really think about it.
I mean, yeah, if you hold a position but don't make any changes and don't have the backing to do it, then what's the point of thinking about it? You just
Yeah,
know she's there. She's
yeah,
always been there.
yeah.
She'll always be there, probably.
It's a bit like, I don't know how it works in the US, but in the UK, universities, higher education establishments will normally have somebody in a position they call chancellor, and it's almost like an honorary position. And all they do is every time when the next year's worth of people pass and get their degree certificates, they're the person that stands at the front, makes a speech, and shakes everybody the hand and says, "Oh, well done." That's
Right.
and they hold no power. They can't influence anything that's really going on. They're just there to smile and wave, and that's
Yeah.
much what the monarchy is in the UK.
Well, I guess that's a lot like here too. But I don't want to truly get into that for all of my American listeners.
Yeah, and it's like
But
it's my cardinal rule: no politics, no religion.
yeah,
Because there's people from all political persuasions,
yes,
religious persuasions, but what unites us all is our love of creativity and modeling. So if we
right.
put aside the controversial stuff, then we
Yeah.
just
Because
be
that's all we're here for. That's the only reason anybody listens to this or probably watches your podcast is because we like the hobby. We're
yeah.
into the hobby. We want to know more about it, and everything we can about it is good. So keep it about the hobby or sidetracks of the hobby, and you're good.
Very much, yeah. But no, it's all good stuff, and like we said before, it's just that kind of organic thing where we're just chatting, and it's why the live stream format I think works really, really well. And it's something actually when I was on with Ken on What's Neat this week, we talked a bit about the live streaming.
Yeah, he's
Kind of,
still baby virgin to that. He
yeah, and
needs to do it.
the thing I love about live streaming is you don't have to edit it afterwards.
Right,
Because it's
right.
just
Well,
you do it and it's
yeah,
done, and you just
right.
um
Yeah, and you can, if you have some of your viewers that really like you, they can give you money for that live stream.
yeah, it's a fringe benefit. And I'm
Right.
always incredibly humbled when people do that, because
Oh,
I always say to
yeah,
people, it's completely free. On
right,
YouTube, you just go there, you can watch it. There's no like begging bowl going, come on, gimme. It's and it really I feel honored that people feel strongly enough that they've enjoyed the content to just give a free donation. It's a bit like when you walk out past a busker on the subway and they're playing a tune and you chuck a bit of money into the can. You don't have to do.
right.
You can still
No,
listen to it and walk
right.
on. But the fact that they've chosen to do that, I always feel really humbled that that they've chosen to do that. I'm really thankful, because it can become quite an expensive business to
Oh,
keep putting
definitely.
out videos, and I think a lot of people don't quite realize that, you know, when we're doing the live stream plus 2 other pre-recorded videos every single week, and I don't think we've missed a slot for something like 18 months since we last had to skip a slot. And you're all
Wow.
thinking up, like, what can we do that's new? You know,
Right.
we do a lot of reviews because people are always interested to see a product in an environment where it's like they themselves are in a model shop, handling it, looking at it, you know, picking it up.
Yeah.
That's what the underside looks like. This is how easy it is to DCC fit. How does it really
Right.
act on a real layout, you know, that isn't really hyper controlled and you know, exactly what the manufacturer wants you to see because it hides all the foibles. But then also, you know, having the creative projects where, you know, I try and build layouts. So I recently did one where I built, it's only very small, but it's a Welsh narrow gauge themed thing. So a bit like the Taliesin Railway or the Festiniog or the Welsh Highland Railway, using narrow gauge, just because it was something very different to what I've modeled up here. So I did a series, I think it was about 8 or 9 parts, where I kind of brought viewers along through every single process of that build, from the start where it was like, here's a pile of wood and we're going to make the baseboard, right through to the end where it was, you know, doing the grass, getting making a waterfall look like a real waterfall, making the trees, and just bringing the viewers along through that process. And it made them almost feel like in part it was their layout as well, which is
Right.
another great thing that you can do with YouTube. You know, people, even though it's not physically their layout, they feel an
Yeah, they were
investment.
there every step of the way.
Exactly. And that as well comes back to that community feel. People really do feel like it's a community because they feel
Right.
invested in what you're doing. But all of that does take a lot of money. The camera equipment, the computer that's up here to run. I think we've got 7 cameras up here to be
Wow.
the raw processing power to handle all that without suddenly
Yeah.
going, ah, and
And then you have to have an editing system too, because you can't just edit it off your phone or just the regular editing that the computer comes with. You have to have a nice editing system to do a good job.
Yeah, and it always tickles me when you get critics who say, well, it's a 20-minute video. It should only take you 20 minutes to make it.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
and I think it's an average video for this channel. You're looking at to say make a 20-minute video, you're looking at 3 or 4 hours to research it, prep for it, do a trial
Right.
run, and then film it. But then you've probably got 6 hours worth of editing, because you've got to then go in and go, well, I need a bit of footage from that. Oh, we've talked about this. I've got a close-up photograph of that bit of detail.
Right.
So there's, you know, this whole process in the editing, and then it's got to compile it. You've got to upload it. You know, there's you could be easily have a very long day for each
Yeah.
videos.
Ken says for his half-hour videos, it takes about 12 hours,
Yeah, I
give or
can.
take.
And it, you know, it is quite an intensive process, you know, and I've now gone to work for DCC Concepts to make video content for them. And, you know, it's like kind of an open secret that Zoe does all my editing and always has done, because I'm a computer Luddite. You know, I'm like I'm world president of the International Techno Weenies. I'm not good with technology. But for this new job, I now have to edit video. So I've been learning editing.
Yeah.
And I think I shot for the first video that I shot for this company. We went up to a place called Ribblehead on the Settle and Carlisle Railway. And we just got a few shots and stuff. And I made a 1-minute video, and it took me half the day. Really simple 1-minute video together. So I have total respect to people who do all this editing.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll get quicker as I go on, but it's not as easy as it looks.
I'm trying to work on that myself. This video podcast, I do an opening monologue where I just record Zoom and then I pause it, and then I get you on, or the guest on, and then we start recording. I unpause it, and then that's the beginning of the podcast. And then when we're done, I'll pause it again, do an outro of the video, and that's the whole video. That's the whole editing right there. And then I'll go to YouTube, and when YouTube allows you to add the suggested videos in the end of the video, I'll put those in, and I'll do all the algorithm stuff that YouTube wants. But yeah, there's not a lot of editing, because I think most people, it just listens to it anyway, so I don't have to dub photos over this, or do live video over the podcast.
Sometimes having that kind of rawness where it isn't processed and cleaned up, and every time somebody's gone and and paused and forgotten or talked in a circle, if it's still got all that in, it feels more like you're there with the people, like you're hanging out in a bar, or you're hanging out at the Model Rail Club with like-minded people, and it's just the conversation just drifts where it goes, and feels less like a kind of curated promotional type video, and just more like hanging out with the community.
Right. And that's why I leave it so loose. And that's why your Monday Club, I think, is so successful, is because mine's not live. I'll have this video up in like a week or two, but it goes out kind of like it's live, because I'm not editing nothing.
That's it. But, it's why it's great going on What's Neat this week, is because I don't have to do any editing.
Right. That's what Ken said when he was on my podcast. He was like, this is so much nicer just to sit down, relax. I don't have to put out no product. We can just talk about whatever. I said, you can drink whatever. If you wanted to smoke whatever, you do whatever you want. I have no sponsors that are going to see this and be like, oh, you can't put that up there.
I mean, I see, and I know that Ken does very well with sponsors, but
he does very well.
In the UK, it's so difficult, because in many respects we're about 10 years behind the US, and there's a lot of companies in the UK are still in this old mindset.
It's probably because of the people that are running the company. They're old. Yeah. So they don't know this new stuff.
And, there are actually manufacturers in the UK, like Bachmann UK barely has a social media presence, and they're getting better, but it's like they've got this mentality that it's like, oh, this will never catch on.
They got a 50-year-old person running it. That's why they don't have a 20-year-old pushing it out there saying, oh, look at all this great stuff.
I think it's basically to them, YouTube is just a bunch of kids playing.
Wow.
And it's not. And we've got companies like Hornby, a big name in the UK, and they've totally embraced social media. They've got their own YouTube channel. They're very proactive on things like Twitter and Facebook. And they really, really do a lot to bring people into the hobby and keep them updated on products. And it's almost becomes like Hornby becomes a way of life for a certain type of modeler, because they can, buy into that whole community feel. Hornby has got that down to pat. But there's still a lot of companies that they'll spend tens of thousands of dollars on advertising in print magazines, but then they'll nickel and dime you for advertising on YouTube. They're like, well, we'll give you like 20 quid maybe, and it's nothing.
It's not enough.
It barely pays for the power that this computer is chewing.
Right.
And
I was talking to Ken, and I think I talked to Ken right after I saw you in his interview, and we were talking for probably an hour, and he was saying, yeah, she is just like me. We are on the same length, but she needs those sponsors. And I was telling her all this, and I was saying, you want to ask for this much for the sponsor compared to that much they would be getting paid in a magazine. You could pay me a lot less, but still pay me what it's worth, but just, you don't have to spend this much for a magazine when I'm getting the same views as the magazine does, and you can get me every month or every week.
And it's a real struggle. There's not many YouTubers in the UK get sponsored, and in many respects, it tends to be the really small companies that are more switched on to the social media scene. So we've got a company that sponsors my Monday Club at the moment, Scale Model Scenery. They're quite a small company, but they're much more switched on to the importance of of social media, of YouTube, and that War World Scenics that do all the static grass that I use, and they've been very supportive. But again, they're quite a small company, which normally means that they can't afford to give you like huge chunks of hard cash, but they'll send you a lot of products. Which, you know, it's great for when you're doing the projects. And I'm starting to reach a point where some of the big manufacturers, they won't sponsor you with money, but like, so yeah, they'll send you an occasional model to review, and when you're done, it's like, do you want it back? Nah, you keep it. So you'll get like a $150 locomotive to keep, which is, you know, it's nice. Saves me buying them. But very few companies will actually entertain the idea of giving you hard cash, and those that do, they will give you a fraction of what they would spend on like a 2-page spread in a magazine.
Because they're still looking at the old way of doing things.
Yeah, but I do have other things where I do affiliate links, where people who follow the link, they notice no difference. But what it does is it like has some code so that the retailer on the other end knows that that person came from my video, and then they can track that they came that way, and then they spent this much. And I 1% of that sale, and I actually make more from that than I do from physical sponsorship to have the branding on the videos.
Wow.
But the beauty of that is I know exactly how effective I am through that. And you know, that's the people, oh, you're just, you know, you're being greedy. Look at you, how dare you make money? Like how we all have to be altruistic, like some kind of Star Trek universe, and work for free. Because you know, the bank is just quite happy for me to live here mortgage free. Not
exactly.
Power company goes, yeah, you use all the power you want, don't mind us. But
put a windmill in your backyard.
Yeah, it's what was I talking about? I've gone off on a tangent now.
Sponsorship and how much they pay and how much they don't pay.
Yeah, but you know, so the affiliate links is not about the actual dollar value that it brings back, but it gives you a very real, concrete way of saying to sponsors, this is how effective I am. I did this video and it sold this amount of stock, and you know, I've sold out models. You know, I can prove through these tracking links that that I sold out models, because you know, you do the video and then you see this huge spike of traffic that comes through that trackable link, and then the model's sold out. And I also do things like, because I know that this hobby is quite expensive for a lot of people. So I do things where I will investigate. It makes me sound like some kind of investigative reporter, but you know, I will find a model shop, a much less well-known model shop, that maybe has stock that they've had on the shelf for 5, even 10 years, and the stock's still good. It's brand new. It's in the box, but it's at the prices that things were 10 years ago. And of course, you know, prices are going up and up and up. And it ends up, you can buy a wagon that you can still buy that same type of wagon made from the same tooling now, but you'll pay 3 times as much. And I will hide that. And I've done a couple of these videos, and I always do them as a mystery shopper. I hate the idea of going, don't you know who I am? Give me. I don't do that. I will literally just log onto their website and go, I'll have one of those and one of those and one of those, and I will buy them just like any other shopper. And then I'll do the video saying, well, look, you know, these are available from here at this price. This is what you get, because I physically bought one. And I'll go through that. And I've done a couple of model shops now. And I actually got an email from the first one that I did. And they said, our mail order just went wild and we couldn't work out why. And then we realized that they were all coming from this video that you did. And they basically sold what they would normally sell in a year, they sold in a couple of weeks. And it was the stuff that they'd had in their stock room for, like, in some cases, 10, 12 years, all out the door, sold. So I did another one. And again, they had this stock that's been hanging around for ages. And it said on the website, you know, like, you know, we've got hundreds of these. They're all sold out now, because I did this video and said to people, this is great value. You know, people always say like, oh, this hobby's got too expensive, I can't afford this. You know, how are people who haven't got a lot of disposable cash supposed to do this hobby? And it's like, I'm saying, look, you know, you just look out there. The stuff is out there. You just have to put in a little bit of legwork. And people are actually quite appreciative of that. You know, they like the fact that you're saying, look, you know, if you're struggling with the cost, here it is at a price you can afford.
Yeah, right.
And again, it's helping some of these smaller retailers as well, who are struggling through the times that we've been through, because they're having to sell stuff mail order, which for a lot of shops it's quite an alien concept. They're so used to selling stuff by people physically coming into their shops, which for the last, it's like just over a year now, they have not been able to do.
Well, for one, I mean, they pay for the product and then they got to pay shipping on that product. So it gets to their place. And now they're having to pay to ship it out because, for one, the customer bought it and paid for the shipping, but the shipping's not free to the people that are shipping it. You still have to pay a cost of that, which they didn't have to do before, because you would just walk in and buy it and that's it. They don't see that product no more.
And all the actual time taken for somebody to put that in the box, to process it, put the address on, take it to the postal depot, get it in the post. So yeah, a lot of extra work. But you know, I think that the industry as a whole has actually coped very well through the period that we've been through. I guess because a lot of people have been at home, and it's like, well, what are we going to do? You know, we can't go out to restaurants, we can't go on holiday, we can't go and, you know, even like recreational things like, oh, I want to go to a museum, or, you know, I want to go to a model show. Oh, they're not on, we can't do that. So people have turned to things like hobbies, and model railroading has been a big winner in a way. People have really embraced what it has to offer to get them through these difficult times. And I know that other hobbies as well, there's a lot of other creative hobbies have also found a renaissance. So like in the UK, there's been a big drive towards home baking, people actually making cakes, that kind of thing, because, you know, like, what are we going to do?
Nothing else to do. Yeah.
Which I think is great, because for so long people have become more and more reliant on convenience things, that all of they're kind of rediscovering what it's like to make things for yourself. You know, and it's fulfilling. You know, for me, building and making something like, say, something as simple as a set of shelves, I much prefer to actually just buy the raw wood, cut them, make them, wood stain them, get them on the wall, and they're exactly what I want. They're not an approximation that you went down to somewhere like IKEA or wherever, and it's sort of what you wanted, but not quite. They are perfectly what I want, and I feel a great sense of fulfillment that I made that I created that. And that's what I love about these creative pastimes.
Well, that's what's great about you in general, is that you have the mindset that you and the confidence is, you say, I can do this myself. I don't need to just go to the store and buy it. I can just get the materials, build it myself, build it the way I want it, and I can execute it without an issue.
And a lot of the things as well, it's one of the other things as well I'm very, very big on, is what I call the transferable skills. You know, when people say like, yeah, why would you want to spend so much time building a model railway? And I always say to them, well, think about it like this. You're buying the lumber and you're making your baseboards, the substructure. Well, that's giving you the skills to do like house repairs, make your own furniture, put up shelves. You don't have to ring up some guy and go, I need shelves, but can you come round to do it? And then he charges you a huge amount, and they never quite do it the way you really wanted. And and it's giving you that confidence to do these sort of things. Being able to repair your fence because you're confident in your abilities to handle and process and deal with lumber and actually make a physical thing out of the raw lumber. The electrics that in a model railway, it's giving you the confidence to then be able to, like, I want to put a light in. I put it in myself. I've got this device. I need to put a new plug on it. I now have the confidence to do that myself. And a lot of the creative skills, you know, like painting and weathering. You can take that and it's like, oh, somebody bashed my car with a shopping cart and ran away in the supermarket. Well, I now know the skills to
Yeah.
be able to blend and match the paint to get
Right.
that ding. And it's things like that. And I say to people, you know, it's all these transferable skills that are such a great basis for the rest of your life. You can
Hmm.
get them from model railroading.
And really, this is the only hobby in all of hobbies that allows you to have so many different little skills underneath your belt
Yeah,
that the model railroading is just naturally there for. I mean, all of it's there. So you just got to figure out how to do it. And once you figured it out, so much stuff now opens the door for you to be able to know how to do.
yeah, yeah,
Unlike so many other hobbies. I mean, you go RC cars and you're building an RC car, but you're not probably painting it. You're not, you know, building scenery for that RC car. You may build a dirt track for it, maybe, or a road racing track. That may be doing it, but the electrical side you're not getting into, lighting and scenery and photography and all this other stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Model railroading has everything.
Very much, and it's a great bankable set of skills for so much other stuff. I mean, you know, and the confidence as well. I mean, you can never underestimate what having confidence in life in general does for you.
Right.
You know, I see too many people who, you know, they can't even change a tire on their car because
Isn't
they,
that pathetic?
yeah, and they're there,
That's the world we live in today.
yeah, they walk in at the side of the road and they have to call out the, you know, the breakdown people to
Yeah.
change the tire. And it's like, you know, it's like, do you really want to sit at the side of the road for the 2 hours it takes the breakdown people to come out?
Not if I can do it in a half hour.
It's the one that you've got in the trunk. It's not
Yeah.
like you didn't have it with you. And yet,
Right.
you know, it's like simple things like that. Just have confidence in your own abilities because, you know, most things are actually quite simple. I mean, I rebuilt a car engine on the drive of my house. I've got an old car, and I just, rather than take it to a garage, it wasn't cost effective to have the PCV system replaced on it because of its age and its mileage. The
Right.
labor costs would have been astronomical to do what needed doing.
Yeah.
And I just thought, you know what, I'll just do it myself. And I just bought the part, and the parts cost me peanuts. You know, you're talking about
Hmm.
like £30 worth of parts. But then I
Right.
spent 2 days and just pulling the engine apart on my drive. Like, you know, whenever it rained, I just sort of like shut the bonnet and went indoors, had a cup of tea or something, and came back out,
Right.
and I did it. And you know what? When I turned the car back on, it did turn on, and it's run ever since. Because I thought, well, you know, how hard can it be? And actually, it turns
Yeah.
out, as long as you just follow fairly clear instructions, not that hard at all.
So
And
for one, you got to know how to read instructions, and a lot of people have problems with that. And then that's where the confidence just goes down the tube because they're like, "Oh, this reads like Japanese words. I can't read any of this. I don't understand it." And now their confidence is shot.
it kind of lost something in the translation from
Right, right.
Chinese.
Even if you have pictures and the pictures are completely clear and understandable, they look at that and like, I can't understand any of this.
Yeah, it's like white noise to me. But you know,
Right.
you know, it's one of the other things I found. Actually, YouTube is such a great resource because if there's
Yes.
anything that you want to do, there will be a
Anything.
video of some guy
Right.
on YouTube talking you through it. And you know, they say
Yeah.
if a picture speaks 1,000 words, then a video is like 1,000 pictures. And it's just,
Right. Right.
and that's what, when I was doing my car, there's actually some guy, so he's in one of the states of America, and he's an absolute nut for the type of car that this is. And all he does is like old Volvos, but old Volvo 850s. And he's got this video where he does this thing and he talks you through it. And all I did every time I got stuck and I wasn't sure
Yeah.
of something, I just go and have a look at his video. But you know, there's videos on there for, you know, you want to know how to wire a plug. There's a video that shows you
Right.
how. You know, you want to know how to bake a cake. There's a video on there that shows you how.
Right.
You know, you
Well,
want to program your VCR. There's a video there that shows you how.
if you still have one. But that's so funny because you were talking about transferring skills. That skill of doing that YouTube tutorial transferred to modeling too. Somebody could watch something that you did and be like, oh, now I know how to do it. Now I can do it because they watched something that you made a little tiny intro for,
Yeah.
show how to do it.
And that's something that I've been hired for in this new job, is to produce very short tutorial videos showing people how to use their products. Because I mean, it's something that when I got there, they said, look, we're sick of people will ring in and ask the same things, and we think, it's not a productive use of time to keep telling people the same solution over and over again. Another person rings up, somebody has to physically on the phone talk them through. They say, well, it's so much more efficient if we just have a series of videos. It's like,
right,
oh, the answer to this, here's the video, just go and watch it. And it's probably a lot clearer watching a video than just trying to remember what some guy told you on the phone. And it's like, as you hang up, it's like your brain goes, woo! And
well,
like,
and a lot of people, I've noticed, and I even have this issue, a lot of people are able to comprehend visual than literature. So if you're reading it, it won't comprehend to put this bolt, this number bolt, in this screw hole compared to, seeing somebody do it. Because then they're like, oh, I see it, I understand it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why the YouTube tutorials are so useful.
Yes.
And it's why I've tried to do YouTube tutorials on things which I guess a lot of established modelers take certain things so much for granted.
Oh, they definitely do.
It never occurs to them that people starting out, they don't know how to ballast track. They don't understand how to wire up the track. And it's what you or I might find like very, very basic things. It's actually a barrier to some people starting out, because how do you know how to do something if nobody shows you or tells you how to do it? So I try and create some very accessible how-to guides. I don't make as many as perhaps I should, but things like I did one on making the trees using that seafoam material. And it was just about showing people in real time how easy it was. I've done videos on laying the static grass and just trying to show people it's not like voodoo. You don't have to sit there and do a magic incantation and the third cycle of the moon and sacrifice a lamb. You don't have to do that. All you do is you just do this very, very simple thing, and it works. And showing people that on camera, it's like something clicks and they go, oh yeah, I can do that.
I wish you would have told me that a lot sooner. I'll stop sacrificing all those lambs I've been killing left and right just to get my grass down.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sick of eating lamb chops. You've got to do something else.
Right. I'm getting tired of lamb, okay?
Yeah, is it all right to use chickens? I don't know.
Right. Well, that's great, Jennifer. You are a wealth of knowledge, and it's so nice to talk to somebody that knows what they're talking about. Because you could be a modeler, you could be a collector, you could have a model railroad, but you don't really know what you're talking about. You just lay track down, bought a train and put it on your track and turned it on. I don't think that's a model railroader, but that's somebody. But there's a lot of people out there that have an idea, but not the insight of that idea. And you are a wealth of knowledge, and it's really nice talking to somebody that really knows what they're talking about.
Thank you. And it's I guess I can blame my father for starting the bug, but after that, I guess I'm just driven by stubbornness. And people say you can't do that or you can't do it that way. It's like challenge accepted. That kind of a person. If somebody tells me you can't do that, I'm immediately looking for a way of doing it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I am. I mean, with these little cars, check this little car out. I did this paint job on this little car.
Wow.
Let me see. I don't know if it, and it's a 187 scale HO scale car. And 95% of people, 99% of people are going to go, that's impossible. Can't do that on that little car. But as long as you have the idea on how to do it, and you got the skills, anything's possible.
Yeah.
You just have to know how to do it.
That's it. And you know, at the end of the day, if you'd have told Shakespeare, like, you know, we're gonna land a man on the moon, they'd be like, we have no idea how. Or we're gonna have this communication device that's like that thin,
Right.
and you know, I can talk to somebody on the other side of the world, and oh look, I can look at pictures of myself on it and cat videos.
Yeah.
They would view that as being some kind of witchcraft, and
Oh,
yet
100%.
and yet clearly it's possible because it's here. You know, with 3D printing things, you know, 10,
Yes.
20 years ago, you said to people like, you know, that thing on Star Trek where they go tea Earl Grey hot. We're going to have
A
one of
replicator.
because you know this is the start of stuff like that. You know, Arthur C. Clarke in 2001 had the video phone, and people looked at that and went, "Well, that'll never catch on." And yet here we are.
Right. You want to hear a funny story? A little side note about 3D printers. I was watching this YouTube video of the latest 3D printers to come out in like 2016. And they just, it was either 15 or 16, and they were replicating not material, they look, replicate, printing edible food.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you can print an apple and you can eat it. Obviously, it's not really made out of an apple, but it's made out of some kind of ingredient that is edible and tastes like an apple.
yeah.
And I saw that video and I thought, Star Trek, the next step is to replicate anything you want right in front of you, and it's ready to go within seconds. That's where the 3D printer is going to end up being, is a
Oh,
replicator.
yeah, yeah. You give it 10, 20 years, and we're going to look back
Yes.
on now and think, wow, how primitive it was now. But, you know, we look at it now and, you know, we're already at a stage where we're able to print some quite intricate things.
Yeah.
And, you know, compared with where we were 5 or 10 years ago, it really has come on a great deal. So, you know, it's only going to get better from here on in. And I think at some point, you know, maybe it'll be a case that manufacturers don't physically make models. You buy a file, and it turns out, I mean, I've got actually, these are the next video I have to do to review. This product is completely 3D printed. I'll try and get it out of the box so you can see it better. But this is, oh, come here, you. Right. Oh, the roof's fallen off. There we are. So this van is completely 3D printed. And, you know, it's got like regular wheels on, NEM pockets for the couplings. And that's come out of a 3D printer. And
That's incredible.
Like it came out of a 3D printer. The detail on it is incredible. It's got like door handles that are actually standing off the door, so there's like air underneath them. Like the brake gear as well, you can see right through that brake gear is just, it's just printed. So this entire wagon is a roof, and that's all it is. And you know, that's where 3D printing technology
and the great thing, that company is going to make so much money off of that, because it's going to cost them pennies to make it, and they're going to get the back end, probably ask them $19, $20, $30 for that, maybe.
Yeah. And I mean, like, so for example, one of these, this one, it's actually a wagon. There's only one known to have ever existed. But because of the technology used to actually make it, it's financially viable to do this, because all it is a CAD file, and then they just put it through the machine and it prints it. It's like, that's a one of a kind. It would never be made commercially using injection molding, because they wouldn't sell the quantities needed to make it viable. But because this is 3D printed, it costs them the same whether they make one or like 1,000 of them. The actual unit cost is the same.
Yeah, and they don't have to make a whole bunch. They can probably just make it upon order. So they don't have to have a whole entire shelf full of them waiting to be sold. They can just say, well, I've got the file. It'll take 4 hours to print, or, you know, 8 hours to print. When they order it, we'll start the printer.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
And, you know, it's exciting times, because it means that all those things where every year people say, oh, I hope this year that such and such manufacturer brings out X, Y, and Z locomotive, X, Y, Z coach, or freight car. And all of a sudden it's a case of, well, you can have anything you want. You want to model something so obscure as to be unreal,
Right.
that's fine. We'll do it. You know, he'll be with you on Tuesday, sort of thing.
Yeah. That's going to be the next step.
Yeah,
Next, 10 years easy, we'll have that where you can, every file will be uploaded to the internet and all you got to do is pick it,
yeah.
ready to
You can
go.
replicate it, and then afterwards
Yeah.
you can replicate steak and chips and just have
Yeah.
that to eat afterwards.
Just think about that future where supermarkets are no longer a thing. Little corner stores where you can buy food. You won't need to go out. You won't need to do nothing. You stay in your house all day. You work from home. You eat at home. Never go out because you can just replicate whatever you want.
Yeah, but if you can replicate whatever you want, what are you going to work for? What do you need the money for? Because you just like create anything.
Well, I think you'd still have to pay your mortgage, your house payment. But I mean, yeah, you wouldn't need to buy food. You just the material probably that makes the food
Yeah,
and
yeah.
electricity. That's it.
Well, somebody would have to make the replicators. There'd be a big factory somewhere
It'll
making.
be robots doing that, so we'll still be out of work.
Then the age-old question: could you replicate a replicator?
Maybe a smaller one. You have a big one this big, and you replicated a small one.
No, that'd be great. I mean, it's like exciting when you think about that. But you know, we've lived through a period in history that is probably the most exciting, the most dynamic, and the biggest change. I mean, you think what we've lived through. I mean, I'm 42, so I remember
I'm
the world.
41.
You know, I remember what it was like before the internet. You know, I
Yeah,
remember when, like when the film Jurassic Park came out,
state of the
you guys
art.
had it. It ran in the cinema before we even got to see it in the UK because everything was so regionalized. And you know, all we knew about places like the US was that, you know, what we saw on TV. We thought it
Right.
was all like Mickey Mouse, Disney, and
Yeah.
you know, Dirty Harry films. That's what we thought the US was like because we, you know, to go there was so expensive. You know, I can remember, you know, no internet. If you wanted to phone somebody, you daren't phone anybody outside your own country because, you know,
Right.
it'd be costing you an arm and a leg. And
Yes.
you know, I can remember we used to get the Christmas phone calls from family around the world because we had family out in Germany, family out in the US. And on Christmas Day, you'd sort of have this very short 5-minute phone call.
Right.
And then it would be like, well, I'll talk to you next year. And that was
Yeah.
it, because, you know, just how things were. And now we've got, you know, if you wanted to watch TV, you basically, if it was on TV then and there, you could watch it. If not, tough.
Right. You missed it forever.
Yeah. And now it's like everything's just there online, and we, you know, we can communicate with each other. The sum total of human knowledge is there online. So like research, you know, I can remember things like wondering what the railway line where I lived used to look like 100 years ago, say.
Right. Right.
And unless you went to somewhere like a library and you got lucky and found a book and
Yeah.
got lucky and it had the right picture at the right angle, then, you know, you were forever wondering. But
Right.
now it's like, I wonder what it looked like. A few keystrokes later, you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of photographs, of diagrams, of whole, you know, articles written about it, you know, all sorts of information that would never have been possible to get 20 years ago. You know,
Yeah.
we live in amazing times.
It is some really neat stuff, and I really feel sorry for my kids and any kids born, relatively present, because they'll never know. They'll
Yeah,
never know what it's like not to have a cell phone.
yeah.
You know.
And not to have to worry about putting embarrassing pictures on the internet.
Right.
Embarrassing pictures
Right.
from when I was at university, they are not on the internet because the internet was not really a thing when I took those embarrassing pictures. They were,
Right.
you took a photograph and you had to take it down to be developed, and you like
Yeah.
2-3 weeks later you discovered you had your finger on the lens.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's no editing because you didn't know you messed up to begin with.
Yeah. And that's it. There's no embarrassing past because quite literally it's in a shoebox in my mum's house. That, you know, that's the sum total of photographs of me before the internet. because
right.
that's just what it was like.
Yeah. And then like video camera, that wasn't very big ever anywhere. Like rich people had video cameras where they can take an 8mm or a VHS tape, put it in their thing, and then video record stuff. But
Yeah,
that wasn't
I
very
mean,
common like today.
I can remember it was either 1985, yeah, about 1985, the company that my father worked for, they bought a video camera for making like corporate training videos. So of course, my father being the site general manager, him and the other managers all used to borrow it on a weekend. And I can remember people thinking he was like some kind of roving news reporter when he'd
Right.
places with this, because they'd never seen somebody with a video camera. It was just such a novel thing.
Yeah.
And it had like a big rucksack on the back that literally had a car battery and a VHS recorder in a backpack. And you
Wow.
physical VHS tape in to record onto. And then the thing was like the size of a TV camera that he had to
Yeah,
balance.
yeah.
And
Wow.
it was just, it was just unheard of back in 1985. And it's weird to watch the videos back now because it's a slice of life which doesn't belong on video because it's from before video camera.
Yeah, right. I
Very,
had a same kind of issue like that too. Right when the Apple iPad came out, I bought it right when it came out because our company gave us a computer loan that we would pay back throughout a year. And I had to ask them, does the Apple iPad count as a computer? Because technically it is. They said, yeah, we think so. Go ahead and buy it. And so I buy it, and it's the big one. It's the bigger iPad that came out first. And I'm walking around to different events and I'm recording stuff and taking pictures. And it's like, what do you got? You got this space age, something that should be on a space shuttle, camera, phone, internet thing that you're holding. And nobody's really seen one because it had just come out. So yeah, it was kind of the same thing. Just not nearly as big as your dad's.
But I mean, the other thing as well, I always feel sorry for kids of today that, when we were kids, if you're getting a hard time at school, at the end of the school day, you went home and you were free of the bullies and
Yeah,
until the following day.
right,
Now
right.
they've got like it's 24/7 for them, and
Oh
that
yeah,
must be so hard. You can't escape from
right.
things like that. And I look at kids of today, and I just think I'm glad I'm not growing up now because
Yes.
that would be quite hard to cope with.
Well, think about your dad and him seeing how you grew up, and he probably thinking the same thing. I'm glad I'm not a kid in these days. It's so funny to look at generations because you as a kid go, God, why doesn't my parents understand me? Why can't I just go do this? Why can't I just go do that? And then you become a parent and you go, oh yeah, that's why. And my kids are never going to do that, just like my parents didn't let me do
Yeah,
that.
I think because every generation thinks that they discovered things for their first time, and they see
Yes,
their parents as being these sort of squares who's like, oh no, you're so unfair. And then you reach
right.
an age where you suddenly think, oh God, I'm
I
turning.
become my parents.
And you find yourself doing things that you used to tell your parents, say like, oh, that is so uncool. And then you find yourself doing the same thing. And you're like, oh my God.
There's there's a pretty popular commercial for an insurance company out here in the US. I think it's Progressive Insurance. And the commercial is this like a teacher, no, like a teacher, like a spokes teacher that helps you not become your parents when you buy a house. Because in the beginning of the video, this young couple buys a house and then they start talking like their parents. Oh, we should turn off all the lights in the house. Oh, don't run the appliances at night because the electricity is going to go higher. The house, this. And then the spokesperson guy is like, I'm teaching them how to not to be their parents. We don't need you to say, oh, I just woke up this morning. How was your day, to the neighbor? They don't care about you. And it's a whole series of commercials like that. And it's funny because as the older you get, you do end up becoming a lot like your parents. And you
Yeah,
don't want to be, but you just end up being that person.
yeah.
Well, Jennifer, I know it's getting later and later the longer we talk. So with that, It was a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate you coming on this podcast, and I hope I didn't keep you up too late.
Oh, it's all right. I just have a lie in the morning. It's an excuse to like stay in bed till noon.
Nice, nice. Well, let me end this, and then we can say our goodbyes after the recording stopped. So, with Jennifer's permission, I'll put her YouTube channel in the description below. I'll put her Facebook page if you guys have any questions, you want to talk to her, get a hold of her, anything and everything. I'll even put that Great Train railroad build off on there. So if you guys want to see that and see her participation on that, you guys can watch that as well. And until the next episode, see you guys later. All right, everybody. That was Jennifer Kirk. A lot about her I didn't know. And she was super knowledgeable about all of it, which is really neat. I mean, her background work history with television and camera and all that stuff, very interesting, because a lot of that background career leads her straight into her YouTube channel, which she's really good at. And just the passion she has for the modeling and the building and the creating and everything that has to do with it. It's we said it in the interview, but it was like talking to a female Ken Patterson. That guy knows everything and has the knowledge and the skill set behind it to do anything and everything it seems like that he wants to do. And so does Jennifer. So it was very, very cool to talk to her. I hate that I had to keep her up that late because it's a 5-hour difference. We started it at 6 p.m. my time. So it was 11 p.m. her time. And I'm just glad that she did it because she was super nice and she's very easy to talk to. And I hope you guys liked the episode. It was a good episode in my opinion. I mean, there's some people that, maybe a little boring or may not talk a lot, and the host, me, has to do all the talking, but she was able to carry her own in the interview process, which was very nice and very easy. So anyways, don't forget, like and subscribe if you haven't, if you like the episode or if you like any of these episodes, and leave a comment if you have any questions. She'll be able to see the questions, and I'll be able to answer them too, or vice versa. And don't forget, there's a Patreon in the description, as well as all the other things I put in there for her, for you guys to follow her and check her out. And yeah, hope you guys like it. Till next episode, see you later.